I wasn't thinking. I was just like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna.
Weird.
Yeah.
Let me ask Alyssa how many times that's happened.
That's hard, Steve.
God, Steve's Are you okay, Steve? Are you
Fucking Batman.
you angry tonight?
I am tired, like real fucking tired.
You do sound tired. I got my water. I'm all ready to go.
Why is Matt wearing the same thing that I'm wearing?
What? I bought a white shirt so I would not be wearing anything you guys wear. I bought it. And you
This is what I was wearing last time too, so you can't blame me.
I don't even look at your character, your avatar. God damn it. Whatever. I like how Ronan's got like COVID. He's on the complete opposite end of the table.
Yeah, Phil, I don't want anything to do with you assholes.
And he's being smart.
It's social distance, motherfucker. Friend. At least it finally gave us a
I don't even
room that's
remember how
not
to play
Russian.
poker right now. I feel like that's offensive, Ronan. Like, what about that room made you think it was Russian?
I said it gave us one that isn't. How many
I
times
know,
does it give-
but that was just a meat market. Like, why are you equating that with Russians?
because of all
racist?
the Russian radio stuff that was going on in the background.
I think there was a lot of writing in Russian on the walls. Graffiti.
No. No.
That would be interesting if they actually removed that from the game, like that whole lobby, like you just couldn't get into it because it's like, yeah, Ukraine.
I mean, if they really wanted to stick it to Putin, then, well, I mean, first of all, he don't care. Second of all, you put Ukraine flags all in the room, because that's the trendy thing to do now. Or to go blue and yellow.
I'm live, so I'm gonna keep my comments on Ukraine to
Yeah,
myself.
let's it's always a good idea to call it trendy to support people being killed.
So, shall we start this podcast, gentlemen? 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Two Matts, One Steve. I'm Matt 1. He's Matt 2.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as Ronan.
Yeah,
Ronan. Yeah.
I'll let you people figure that one out.
And we have, there in a very grumpy state tonight, a tired, grumpy state, is Steve.
Hello, hello. Yay.
So, Steve.
Matt stole my outfit.
Not my fault.
This hurts him on a spiritual level. It really does.
It does. Yeah. So, tonight, guys, we're going to talk about the Batman. Now, interestingly enough, Steve did not have a very positive reaction to the Batman, which I'm excited for. I'd like to hear all about it. But before we do that, is there anything interesting that's been going on? Just an icebreaker. What did you have for breakfast this morning, Ronan?
I usually skip breakfast. I don't have time for it.
Oh, you can't make time for breakfast?
Yeah.
What was the first meal you ate today?
At break time, I had a pack of crackers with some turkey and cheddar.
Fascinating.
Did you put the turkey and cheddar on top of the crackers?
Of course.
Okay, just making sure. Because my first thing when people say crackers, I think like little saltine crackers.
Well, if you're British too, like cracker, don't they mean something else, or is that? No, it's fish and chips. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Okay, I was worried about where you were going with that.
we need like we need to play on like a 5-second delay, and you need the button.
Steve, what did you eat today?
Burger.
From any particular restaurant, or did you make it yourself? Or
I made
details,
it
please.
myself.
Okay.
This is great content.
This is wonderful content. Now, I had broasted chicken, and I got it from Valentino's, which is kind of known as the Italian
What?
restaurant. Yeah, right? So Valentino's offers broasted chicken. It was an 8-pack. It was supposed to be 2 breasts, 2 wings, 2 thighs, and 2 legs. But instead they gave me 3 wings and 1 leg, which kind of pissed me off because everybody loves the legs, and I didn't get it. But I will say that the broasted chicken at this Italian restaurant here in town was actually a lot better than I would have anticipated. So, yeah.
Are you
I'm
saying the
assuming
Italians can't do
roasted.
chicken?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that's not their forte. Their specialty is pizza. I would not, you wouldn't go to a Chinese restaurant for like a really awesome, I don't know, seafood dish from England or something. You wouldn't
This is
go there
all
for
gonna be
fish
cut.
and chips. You wouldn't go to a Chinese restaurant for fish and chips, is what I'm saying.
0% chance this stays in the final product.
So yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
I assume broasted means baked and roasted.
It is
I'm not
put
familiar
in a
with this
pressure
term.
cooker. It's like put in a pressure cooker. So it's like you fry it, but you also put extreme pressure on it, and it supposedly locks in all the juices. And I will
I
say,
thought it meant that it would walk around with like a polo shirt with like a puka shell necklace and some Crocs. I thought
Oh
that's
god,
what
we're
broke.
cutting all of this.
no, I'm going to leave that in. He's not going to live that one down. So yeah, it locks in all the juices and all the seasonings and flavors. And I will say this chicken was mighty juicy. I will say that. So I'm a fan of the broasting of the chicken. That's that title of this episode, the broasting of the chicken.
The broasting.
The
broast-
broasting, the broasting of the
broasting
Batman.
of Batman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Two Matts. There you go. Two Matts, one mind. That's what we should recall this thing.
I could be napping.
All right, guys. So let's just get into it. Enough small talk about what we ate today. Let's talk about the Batman. Directed by Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves, most famous, I think. Most people would probably recognize him from the Planet of the Apes movies that came out recently. He directed a couple of those. Fantastic movies, yeah. I really like the Planet of the Apes movies. We got a new incarnation of Batman. What I do find it kind of interesting about Batman movies is whenever there's a new Spider-Man, they freak out. They're like, oh, they're rebooting Spider-Man again. We just had a new Spider-Man and blah, blah, blah. Nobody says that about Batman. We always have all these new incarnations of Batman constantly, and not a single person is ever crying on the internet about, oh, we just had Batman. Why we have another Batman? Interesting thing that I noticed. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the movie, our thoughts on Batman. We talked about Spider-Man, where our love for Spider-Man came from. Well, let's talk a little bit about our love for Batman, or maybe lack thereof. Ronan, we'll start with you. How much love do you have for the character of Batman?
Well, like every other sane, rational human being on the planet, my overwhelming knowledge of Batman comes from the Bruce Timm Batman the Animated Series show from the '90s, one of the greatest shows of all time. So that's the bulk of my knowledge. I do have some, like I've got Batman Year One and a couple other books over in my little book case over here. So I do have some cursory knowledge of comic book Batman. Younger me was very much part of that whole stupid internet meme. Batman could beat anybody with pep talk. No, that's dumb and stupid. But I'd like to think that the internet kind of moved on past that particular Batman meme. But yeah, he's definitely one of the he's one of DC's like holy trinity, like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, but he's the only one out of the three that's actually interesting. So
Okay. So growing up as a kid, was Batman like high on your list of favorite heroes? Like where would you sort of rank him in terms of, your excitement level for a new Batman character?
You mean for a new movie, like when I was a kid?
Well, just like, for example, I grew up, I loved Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man was my superhero. Was Batman that to you?
I can't really say that with any of the superheroes. Like, I like them, but like that, I never had kind of a superhero obsession with any of them, really.
Okay, that's fair. So your love came from Batman the Animated Series. We'll touch on that in just a second. Steve, where are you at on the Batman?
Pretty much the same boat as Ronan. My initial, like Spider-Man, my introduction to him, my introduction with Spider-Man was the Fox Kids cartoon. My introduction to Batman was also Batman TAS. The early seasons of Batman the Animated Series prior to the animation style change is kind of optimal Batman for me. That's my favorite Batman. Eventually, like that whole series led into Superman TAS and then Justice League and Batman Beyond and the various parts of the DCAU. But that earliest Batman is probably my favorite. As far as I don't know any sort of superhero hierarchy, I was always more of a Marvel fan than DC. So while I always really liked Batman, he always came second to X-Men, Avengers, etc. I am pro Batman, but he's not my favorite by any means.
Okay, that's interesting. I come at it from a slightly different angle than you guys. I do think it's really interesting that for both of you, Spider-Man and Batman, you were sort of introduced to that character via the cartoons. And I think it's incredibly undervalued how important cartoons are to characters like this and franchises, because I mean, look at something, even segueing into Star Wars. Look at what like the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff has done for just the brand of Star Wars and bringing so many more people enjoying them because you watch that stuff as a kid and you sort of follow it along. I of course became aware of Batman with the comic books. Batman was not a comic book I read consistently, but I read it enough. Like, obviously, I was a Marvel comic fan, so Spider-Man and X-Men and all of that stuff. But Batman always seemed like, okay, that he just had a cool factor to him. So I would pick up Batman comic books here and there. And I distinctly remember being very excited for the Tim Burton movie. I think that came out in 1989. So, yeah, I would have been 8 years old. And I remember going to that movie, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. So my first sort of, I guess cinematic version of Batman that I really loved was that Michael Keaton, Tim Burton one that came out in '89. I even remember we went to Hollywood Boulevard and they actually had the Batmobile out there and they had like the spotlights on and stuff, and you could, it was like a big deal when you saw that original Tim Burton sort of Batman Batmobile. So that's where I sort of started. I guess I wouldn't call myself a lover of Batman. Like, I still think Batman's awesome. It's like I will always go watch a Batman movie, but I'm not tied to Batman like I am to other characters. But what I will say is I agree with you guys 100%. That Bruce Timm Batman the Animated Series that run in the early 90s is untouchable. I think it's incredible, and I think most people agree it's probably one of the greatest cartoons of all time. And I just love Bruce Timm's art style. I love sort of that film noir-y kind of look that they gave to it. I mean, I remember distinctly Batman the Animated Series, like, rushing home from school to make sure I did not miss an episode of that because I wanted to be, I had it as like must-see television for me when I was a kid. And so, yeah, I think that is great. And I think, generally speaking, I've enjoyed most of the Batman movies, even sort of like the because I like the Tim Burton ones. I kind of like the Joel Schumacher ones more because I just think it's just sort of goofy and campy. The Christopher Nolan ones, I liked all of them except for Dark Knight Rises. And I don't feel like there's ever been a really bad representation of Batman. I even liked Gotham for what it was, the television show. So, again, Batman is not any of our favorite superhero characters, but we all like Batman. We all get kind of excited, maybe not Steve, for a new Batman movie, as we'll find out. Let me ask you about the Batman the Animated Series. What was it, Ronan, about that show that really captured your imagination?
Well, more or less, like it's hard to say what it captured your, like, as a kid. It's hard to say what about it captured the imagination. It was just it was that show that came on and it was good, so you watched it. Like which that sounds kind of simplistic, but that's more or less how it was. It's like, oh yeah, this show is good, so I will watch it. Wherein other show like I would skip certain shows that would there were shows that would come on that if you didn't care for it, you were fine, like changing the channel or finding else what was on for that particular hour and a half, hour long that was on. You didn't do that for Batman because it was just good, so you watched it. Again, it's not necessarily that whole I would watch it and like I want to be the Batman. It wasn't anything like that. It was just good and like that. That came from an era of cartoons, and this could be a whole episode in and of itself. What was it about the '90s that made so many of the best cartoons? And and then it just the quality of cartoons seemed to have dropped off a bit until recently, like last 10-ish years. So you get the early '90s, about '98 or so, it kind of tends to tipper off, and then now we get these good ones. But I think what made that show work so well was kind of the thing that made Gargoyles work too. Was that was a show that those were shows that respected a kid, that respected the fact that kids are smart enough to understand that something is dark.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a really great point.
You felt almost like more adult. I mean, this might be a stupid thing to say, but you felt like almost more adult watching something like Batman the Animated Series because there was nothing goofy about it. Like there was nothing overly violent or scary about it. But it was a show that took itself very seriously. I know as like a 9-year-old watching it, I felt somewhat more mature for watching this thing that isn't just goofy and over the top like most of the other cartoons that I watched.
That was a show that respected your opinion. It respected your intelligence. As much we could. Animaniacs was great. Pinky and the Brain were great, but that was like goofy comedy. Where in something like Batman or Gargoyles, that told you a story, and it respected your intelligence and understood the fact that if it told you a good story, you would pay attention. It didn't need to give you something flashy to keep your eye on the ball. Like there was nothing shiny to keep you into Batman because the whole show was like color graded down. It's like it didn't have anything like that. It just told a good story, and it knew that kids were smart enough to stick around for a good story.
Yeah, and I think that those points that you guys make are spot on. I distinctly remember why I liked that show is I love the art style. I always thought it was just visually awesome to look at. And even to this day, I love looking at Bruce Timm's artwork. I just think there's something about it. I don't know. It's like the weird way he draws people is so different and unique. So it looked very different than anything else that was on cartoons when it first came out. I mean, it was very dark and crazy. But I also distinctly remember the voice acting. I mean, everyone knows Mark Hamill as the Joker, right? And when I was a kid, I had no idea that was Luke Skywalker doing that. I mean, it just never registered with me, and I was just like, man, who's the guy that did the voice of Batman? Is that Kevin Conroy?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so. Yes,
he's so good, right? I mean, I mean, they perfectly cast voice actors for this show, and I think when you have great voice actors combined with the great art, it just it sort of transcends your typical sort of goofy comic or cartoon sort of stuff. I mean, I remember watching stuff in the '80s like G.I. Joe and stuff like that. Those were fine, but it was nothing like this. This seemed like it was something very different from anything that we'd ever seen before. So that's what gravitated me towards that show. I honestly could not sit in here and tell you about a bunch of the different stories that were involved in it. I'd have to go back and rewatch them. I was just really struck by the art style and, again, sort of like the more mature thing. I mean, there was goofy stuff in some of the episodes. It wasn't just dark, horrible, all the way through. But I mean, I look at that stuff now and I'm just like, God, this just looks gorgeous. There's a really great documentary on YouTube. I can't remember the name of it. I'll link it in the show description. But there's a really great documentary on the making of Batman the Animated Series, and I think it's like an hour and a half long or something. But it talk. The interviews with all the people that made it, how they came to make the decision of the look of the show and the feel of the show and what they wanted the tone to be, and and Batman for as much as I love Spider-Man. And if someone were to put me up against a wall and be like, "Who's got the greater rogues gallery?" I'm always going to argue Spider-Man, but I can definitely see someone arguing for Batman because another powerful impact of that cartoon was all of the characters were so great. Like I take that back. I still remember like the Mr. Freeze storyline and everything. I mean, that's just like wow. I mean, it just seemed really, really cool and interesting, and they just pulled it off really, really well. So that's how I sort of remember Batman the Animated Series.
I can remember several episodes because the Batman didn't tell like an overarching. It was an episode. It was the storyline of Batman was episode to episode, kind of like G.I. Joe or Transformers. But unlike those shows, which were specifically tailor made to sell you a toy. Like Batman was like episode by episode basis, just because of that was just the best way to tell to tell a Batman story. But there are certain episodes of that show that more particularly stand out to people's memory. I think one of the best ones was Almost Got Him, which was just one where like all the villains are playing poker like we are now. And they're just talking about the various times that they almost got Batman, but that he got away.
That's my favorite episode. Like, hands down, that's my favorite.
Yeah, the great moment with Killer Croc talking about how, there I was, and, he was cornered, and then I grabbed a rock. Yeah, then Batman just beats him. But, there's that one. There's one where, I believe this was also taken from an old 60s comic book where Joker puts, he makes fish that smile.
Joker fish.
And, yeah, the Joker fish, and he tries to, trademark them. But I think that's actually, an arc from, a 60s comic, I believe. Then... Hi, DJ.
Oh, hi, DJ.
Oh, DJ.
I didn't even realize you had popped on. You missed a golden opportunity to just go beep. How are you, DJ? Where are you going? Okay, Spokane. Wasn't that where your mist thing was, honey? Spokane? Yeah. Oh. That doesn't sound exciting at all. Well, we're in the middle of recording a podcast right now. Will do. See ya. I didn't even notice he popped in.
I saw his name pop up and I was like, oh no.
I was waiting for it. I was like, this is going to be good.
Well, I heard a weird laugh in the background. I was like, was that Steve laughing like a kind of hyena? I didn't know what it was, and then all of a sudden he pops in. I was like, oh, okay. So where were we?
The Joker fish.
The Joker fish. Steve, you want to talk about the Joker fish?
I mean, I think Ronan already discussed this, but Joker basically infected fish with Joker gas that made all the fish have the crazy Joker smile. And then Joker thought that equals profit. It's like step 1, fish, step 2, Joker gas, step 3, question marks, step 4, profit. Was the Joker's plan here?
That was essentially it, because it doesn't work, and he gets upset that he can't do it. So that was essentially how it happened. It went from that to murder.
I think Almost Got Him is easily my favorite. The Mr. Freeze origin episode is fantastic. I'm pretty sure it won like some crazy awards for that. Two-Face, I think, is probably... I feel like every time I think of Batman bad guy is my favorite changes, but right now I'm going to semi-confidently say that Two-Face is my favorite. And so I love the two-part episode where Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, and Ronan mentioned that these are mostly episode-to-episode stories. There's not like any great arc. While there's not any great arc, there is continuity though, because Harvey Dent is introduced as just Harvey Dent, and then later on down the line he becomes Two-Face. Yeah. I think. If that's not accurate, feel free to edit that out.
No, I believe that's. I think you're right. Sadly, I haven't watched the show since it came on the air. Like, I mean,
really?
I believe,
wow.
Yeah, I believe it's still on. Like, because it's just stuck in my mind mentally. I do believe though that it's like in. I think. What is it now? Because Warner Brothers app isn't around. Like their streaming service, I think got like shifted into what is it? Showtime.
No, it's on HBO Max.
That's
if
it.
You have
HBO.
That.
Yeah. It's like that got merged in. I'm not sure if Batman the Animated Series is on there. I know a bunch of. Yeah. Okay. About that. I know a bunch of their stuff is. It's been in my Amazon list for a while now to just buy the full series on Blu-ray so I can just have it, so I don't have to worry about like streaming rights and shit. There is another episode that I recall. I don't remember the title of it, but the gist of the episode is that some no-name criminal supposedly kills the Batman. And then Joker has a eulogy for him, which is one of those things when Mark Hamill does nerd conventions. It's one of the things he gets asked for to do the most is to do Joker's eulogy, like Joker's eulogy to Batman, because Joker is sad that Batman is dead, and that some nobody got him, and so he's going to kill the guy that got Batman. And then, spoilers, it turns out Batman isn't dead, and he's been following this guy around the whole time so he can find the Joker. But that's another episode that stands out too.
If you like those kind of episodes where, like kind of like the poker one, where all the villains are standing around and talking about how they almost got Batman, or the eulogy one, you guys should read a comic story called "Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader." It was written by Neil Gaiman, and the whole comic is Batman has died, and all of the villains show up at his funeral. And they all tell the story of how Batman died, and it's from the point of view of each villain, but it's a completely different story. Like the Two-Face has a different story as how Batman died from the Joker, like completely separate things. So it's almost like each one of them are kind of saying that they killed him, if I remember correctly. And so the comic, you get all these different stories, but it's actually really interesting because it shows how much these villains, they almost respect Batman, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, well, I almost liken it to a really high level sports player, right? Like if you have like the two greatest sports players and they have some amazing competition against each other and they're both exhausted, one of them comes out on top, but they're just like, mad respect to you, man. Like I did everything I could and you just beat me, my hat's off to you, sort of thing. That's what this comic is kind of like. So I'd recommend Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
That actually makes me think about another episode of the Batman anime series, which can tie into the Batman movie, in that this is an episode in which they have captured Batman in Arkham, and they're going to hold a trial for him. And the gist of it is that the villains are like they even get a lawyer in there to represent him, to represent Batman. And the Joker is the judge, and
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Harvey Dent is the prosecutor. And the case that they're making is that Batman is responsible for all of them. His existence somehow created all of them, and he's responsible for them, which ties into the Batman movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't he call Two-Face as a witness, but he specifically calls Harvey Dent? I think that's a thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I mean, this show had great writing, man. It had great writing. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, as much as I enjoy that series led into the rest of the DCAU, like Justice League, there's a point in the series where the art style shifts and it becomes more simplistic and it matches what would later become the Justice League. I thought I like the series less at that point because I think that's the point where Batman becomes kind of what Batman is known for today, like super stern, super serious. Everything is about the mission. Everything else be damned. Mission, blah, blah, blah.
A robot, yeah.
Yeah, he basically becomes a justice robot. The reason that I say that the early Batman from the animated series is optimal Batman is because even though he's serious, even though, he's going to put the mission above everything else, he's still, very routinely showing that he cares about his team and the people around him. He cares about Dick Grayson. He cares about Alfred. He's not afraid to crack a joke every so often. Like he pranks Alfred on April Fools.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not yet super serious, stern, robotic Batman, which he would be basically from that animation style change throughout the rest of the DCAU.
And his existence, pretty much.
Yeah. Other thing I'll mention that sort of popped in my mind is sort of I guess you'd be kind of consider them secondary or your lower tier Batman villains, but I still remember the episodes of Man Bat and Clayface and all that stuff. It's and there's a power to those stories and sort of like simplistic origin stories in a way. But what Clayface, he was like an actor, right? If I remember correctly, he was an actor of some sort.
Matt Hagen.
Yeah, and I still remember that stuff, however many years, 30 years later, basically. And that just shows, the power of the storytelling that they did. And I totally agree with you. The style, the art style change, so much of that show was how it looked. That's what made it so unique and interesting and cool to watch visually. And when they sort of shifted the art style, it lost a little something. The stories could still be awesome, but it just doesn't have the same feel and it doesn't have the same tone to it that it had before. But yeah, Scarecrow is actually my favorite Batman villain. I love Scarecrow, so a lot of those episodes I really loved. But the interesting thing about it was it The Dark Knight Rises, Christopher Nolan's third film. There's a sequence in there where Scarecrow is kind of like the judge, whatever, when all the crazy. But that was originally supposed to be Heath Ledger's Joker, but of course Heath Ledger passed away, and so they put Scarecrow in there. But that was how the Joker was actually going to show up in The Dark Knight Rises originally, from what I've read. So they kind of folded some of that into that film in a small way.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I honestly don't know how much of that is true or not, as to whether or not that was supposed to be Heath Ledger. I don't know if that's just internet hearsay or not, but I have heard that story as well.
Well, you would got to imagine that they would have had if Heath Ledger had not died, and it would be weird not to have him somewhere in the third film. Because he doesn't die at the end of it. It'd just be bizarre that he wouldn't be there.
He died before the movie came out, right? So yeah, that can't be right then, because they didn't have these, they didn't pull a James Cameron where they we're gonna film 3 movies at the same time, and
No, yeah, they didn't do that, but I think that they had a general sort of idea, like from what I've read anyway, that Christopher Nolan had a general idea of where he wanted everything to go. Like maybe The Dark Knight Rises script wasn't, written in stone or anything like that, but I think there was general concepts of what do we do when we have, Gotham City is now being run by the crazies. You wouldn't not be able to have Joker in there somewhere. I mean, how would you explain that when Bane shuts down Gotham and lets all the inmates out, that suddenly Joker's not there? That would just be weird. You'd have to have him in there somewhere. It makes logical sense now because the viewers know, like, he passed away. I mean, so that's why he's not there. But if Heath Ledger was still alive, what would you do with the Joker? You'd have to at least show him doing something, wouldn't you?
You'd figure, but there could also be a case made that without Batman going around the city, and you could make the case that he sees that the Batman isn't going around, and maybe he hears tell that Bane has beaten him or something, so he doesn't really have any kind of goal at that point. It's what else? What's he supposed to do? Go back to ripping off drug dealers?
Oh, I think it would have been awesome if Batman had to team up with him somehow. I think that would have been a really cool story arc.
It would have been great to see the Joker try to pull the same shit on Bane that he tried on Batman, and Bane just kills him because Bane doesn't put up with that shit. That's how you write Heath Ledger out of the movie.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question for you guys, and maybe this is just obvious, so maybe it's not that, crazy of a question. But would you guys say that the Batman and Joker are basically the greatest sort of duo in comic book history, like for a hero and a villain? I mean, is there anybody else you can even think that would even come close to rivaling Batman and the Joker?
Rivalry-wise, yeah, because duo is a different thing. Duo would be like Batman and Robin, but in terms of rivalry, it's at least ever since the '89 Batman movie. I understand comic-wise, the Joker was always kind of his main villain. There were comic books that existed before that firmly established that, but I do think that a large part of that now is part of the cultural zeitgeist because he's the go-to guy for the movies and the TV show and stuff. But even regardless of the reason why, what, Spider-Man, the Green Goblin, or Doc? No, that doesn't count. The closest second I could think of is Superman and Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor. That's the closest I could think of.
It's weird you mentioned that, because I would agree that Joker and Batman are probably the most iconic of the rivalries. But now that you mentioned Superman and Lex Luthor, I greatly prefer Marvel to DC, but I can't think of any one-on-one rivalries from Marvel that even come close to how linked Batman and Joker are. Spider-Man and Norman are probably the closest, but they're the closest as far as Marvel has. I feel like maybe DC has done a much better job of establishing these lifelong and comic-long rivalries.
I can only think of two Marvel ones that come close.
Professor X, Magneto.
Yeah,
Mr.
that's
Fantastic,
that's a good
Doctor
one.
Doom.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Wolverine, Sabretooth.
Yeah, but I still don't. When I think Wolverine, I don't automatically think of Sabretooth. When I think of Batman, the Joker is always not far behind.
Yeah, that's totally right. Magneto and Xavier, that does track in my brain, but yeah, not nearly as strongly as Batman and Joker or Superman and Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting that and even I guess the Flash isn't on the same level as Batman and Superman, obviously, but I always think of Reverse Flash whenever I'm thinking of the Flash.
All the good heroes have a bad guy that is just their opposite, like Flash, Reverse Flash, Superman, Bizarro. I think you can make the case that Joker is basically like Batman unhinged, which is kind of the storyline they were going for with Arkham Knight. That game sucked, but that was part of the story.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you think makes the Joker? So, here's the thing: like, when you think of the Joker as a character, what is the first thing that comes to mind? If I was to ask you, Steve, give me like the top 3 traits of the Joker, like as a character. What would you say they are? Like off the top of your head, how would you describe the Joker to someone who had no idea who the Joker was?
Obsessed. I don't know that I would even need another 2 descriptors. Like his obsession with Batman and getting Batman to somehow violate this super strict morality code that Batman is now known for, robot Batman, as we've mentioned. That is the main thing to me. Joker wanting Batman to violate that, and Joker also getting upset. Joker kind of feels like he owns Batman. Like, Joker thinks that Batman is his rival and no one else's.
Well, I think he's like in love with Batman. There's actually been comics that have come out where basically it's like the Joker loves him.
Yeah, I mean, in Dark Knight Returns, Batman disappears and Joker just kind of goes catatonic, like he's lost his reason for living and existing.
Yeah, he becomes a normal, upstanding citizen.
So, Ronan, how about you? If I were to come up to you and I'm like, who's the Joker? What are you talking about? How would you describe the character of the Joker in like a sentence?
If I were going to describe it to a comic nerd who somehow didn't know, I would go extreme chaotic neutral, like D&D kind of terms, because that's the more or less the best kind of thing I could think of. Because it's not even necessarily about being evil. It's just like he just kind of does things, and it is usually to provoke some kind of a response from Batman, because that's the only challenge he can get. If I were having to explain it to a normie, I would just go extremely unhinged for the definition for Joker.
Yeah, like completely psychotic, sort of. I'd probably think like psychotic clown is what would come to mind for me. What do you guys think? Why do you think Joker is such a great villain? Just in the grand scheme of things, because I don't think there's anybody who likes comic books that would ever say the Joker's a shitty villain. What makes the Joker such a great villain in all of his incarnations? Because I think one of the really interesting aspects of the character of the Joker is you can have so many different types. I mean, people love the goofy, campy Joker from like the Adam West Batman television series. Cesar Romero with the mustache and everything. People love that Joker. People love, Jack Nicholson Joker. People obviously loved Heath Ledger Joker. There's a lot, and this will segue into when we talk about the Batman, but there's already a lot of love for the new Joker that's coming in this new Batman cinematic universe and what they're doing with him there. Why do you think, and I'll throw it to you first, Steve, why do you think the Joker is such a great villain as opposed to other villains, like let's say Dr. Octopus, right? We all agree Dr. Octopus is an awesome villain, but I don't think anyone would put him on the level of the Joker in terms of cultural impact, and very few people are getting tattoos of Dr. Octopus on their body, but tons of people have tattoos of the Joker on their body. What makes him so memorable?
I think you've kind of already pointed it out with getting something different every time, and there being multiple versions of the Joker, multiple Joker types, which I think didn't DC canonize that with like a 3 Jokers storyline or something?
They did do a 3 Jokers storyline, yeah.
But every time you see the Joker, you're getting something different. Like, the Joker doesn't really have an image. Again, let me preface this by saying I'm not like a DC scribe or anything, but Joker doesn't really have an MO aside from be the best at fucking with Batman. Like, every time you see the Riddler, What's he gonna do? Well, he's gonna plan a crime, but then leave riddles because he needs Batman to figure things out. What
He
can you
needs
count
people to know
on?
he did it.
Yeah, what can you count on the Joker to do in like absolutely every Joker story? I don't think there's an answer the same way the rest of Batman's rogues gallery has that answer.
The only answer is laughing. But yeah.
Yeah, life's a joke, right? He thinks the whole thing's a joke. I think that one of the reasons why people love the Joker so much is I think there's a cool factor to the Joker, just sort of visually, and his sort of like the attitude of I don't give a fuck. I'll watch it all burn down and I'll laugh while I'm doing it. You know, it's the same sort of reason, same thing. And people love Fight Club, right? That same sort of, you know what, fuck this all. And somewhere deep down, when people watch the Joker doing shit, even though it could be awful, horrible shit, I think deep down some people say, well, you know, I don't think he's doing things that are necessarily, you know, too terrible. You know, and I think there's that weird sort of people like that they love the character of the Joker, but then they're like, man, what does that say about me? That the Joker's doing all this awful, terrible stuff, but it's great. Like, we loved Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger's doing all kinds of awful shit in that. Actually, the most impactful scene in The Dark Knight for me was the scene where Joker's with, oh, I don't know, he's with all these gangsters or whatever, right? It's not the scene where he gets the pencil in the eye. It's the scene where there's that gigantic mountain of cash, and he just burns it all in front of them, and you just kind of see the look on their face. It's like he doesn't give a fuck. Like, he doesn't
Fuck
care.
capitalism.
He doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about any of this shit. He's just there to do whatever he wants to do. In this case, it's awful, horrible stuff, but I think that resonates with people. It's a character, like, even in other superhero villains, their villains have, quote-unquote, a code. You know, Dr. Octopus has a code, and Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, they have codes and things of that nature. The Joker doesn't have any of that. He just is like, I'm not tethered to anything. He's like the total representation of pure freedom, of being able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, and, you know, consequences be damned. And I think that resonates with people on some sort of subconscious level. I don't know, Ronan, what do you think?
Well, yeah, that's chaotic neutral. on the D&D character selections. Well, where did you place your character on your chart? Yeah, the chaotic neutral. There's no real allegiance to anything outside of just, you know, the Dark Knight really played up the whole chaos thing. But my understanding, at least from like Batman the animated series and even the comics that I have read with Joker, isn't necessarily like an allegiance to the idea of like chaos is like, you know, everything has to burn. It's like I think it was the Long Halloween that went into it, where it's more or less like him trying to show the world that all it takes to bring you to his level is one bad day. One really bad day. That's all it takes to make anybody go to his level.
Yeah, I think that resonates with people because I think a lot of people believe that, right? How many times have we had days in our lives where, like, oh my god, I'm about to snap. Like, I just feel like I'm gonna snap. Or Joker's like the representation of that. So on the flip side of things, why do you guys think so many people love the character of Batman? Now, Batman has this sort of, obviously, you know, deep dive comic nerds will be like, well, Batman has killed in comic books before. If you go back to 1953, blah, blah. Okay,
Yeah.
we get it. Yeah, way back in the day, comic books did certain things. But we're talking about the general representation of Batman as it is known in the cultural zeitgeist is Batman does not kill people. That's kind of like his main rule. His parents were gunned down, and he just doesn't kill. He won't kill. He's not going to kill a Joker. The Joker will kill 10 million people with an atomic bomb or some shit like that, and Batman still won't kill him. So you've got this sort of guy who goes around and tries to protect Gotham City from all these nuts. By the way, I would never live in Gotham City. Gotham City seems like the worst place on earth. even with Batman there. And I do like that the new movie, I don't know if you guys caught it, but Robert Pattinson, they actually wrote that in there, where he was just kind of like, it's a big city, I can't be everywhere. I've got to pick and choose what I'm going to, who I'm going to save and how I'm going to do it.
Targets carefully.
Yeah, and I actually like that in the new movie where they came out, they weren't trying to make Batman as kind of like a Superman character. Superman can be everywhere in Metropolis, he's got super speed, he can do whatever, but Batman, I always thought, was like, he's just a dude, and this is like a New York City. He can't get to the other side of the city quickly. Like, how does he do this? But why do you guys think, Steve, I'll throw it to you first, why do you think so many people love the character of Batman? He's this ultra-rich, kind of playboy, depressed dude who runs around at night. Like, why do people gravitate and love that character so much?
I think a lot of people wish that they could adhere to their own personal code and morality as much as Batman. Like, Batman does not compromise. I mean, you'll get some occasional weird one-off comic where something happens, like he'll pick up a gun. But for the most part, Batman has some sort of code of honor, and he does not bend it, he does not break it whatsoever. And I think a lot of people wish they could be that. Also, they wish they could be, billionaires. But I think, yeah, I dislike the super robotic Batman that we've already touched on. But at the same time, I wish I could adhere to anything as strongly as Batman can adhere to his mission.
Interesting. All right, Ronan, how about you? Why do you think people love the Batman so much?
I've always been kind of surprised why it is that, like, you don't get more. You get a lot of, like, the workout. The guys who are in the gym always working out and stuff. They're usually wearing, like, a Superman shirt. Man of Steel. I never understood why that wasn't, like, the Batman they were wearing the shirt of, because I think that's more kind of the thing that's why it is that makes Batman have such mass appeal is you can't be Superman, you can't be Spider-Man, you can't be Captain America, because all of these people, like, the Superman was born with it because he's an alien. Spider-Man was bitten by the spider. Captain America got the serum. Batman's just a guy, and he's an achievable superhero. If you've got the dedication and the willpower, you don't necessarily need the money. Although, you need the money if you want the car. Anybody can be Batman. I think that's his kind of appeal is, it's determination and drive. He's like the pinnacle of what a dude can do. So I think that's his appeal.
Okay, that's interesting. I honestly think that the appeal of Batman is the visual aspect of it. I think people really gravitate. I think people like darker sort of subject matter material, and I think for your general, if you were to ask, my mother, for example, to tell me about sort of like a quote unquote dark superhero with a gritty sort of aesthetic and heavily shadowed and stuff like. Name another superhero that has that kind of aesthetic to them. I don't think she could
Punisher.
name anybody. Well, yeah, you could do Punisher, but I don't think she would know that. She wouldn't know the Punisher. The Punisher's not something. The Punisher is more like, I don't know. He's like Batman with no moral code, I suppose. I guess you could kind of talk about the Punisher that way. Maybe Daredevil.
The Punisher is what a real life vigilante would be. Just a dude with guns.
Yeah. But I think people just like the visuals and the aesthetics and the tone of Batman. I think that's what brings people in, the look and the feel. It's so very different from like a Superman, right? Brights. I mean, most people have in their minds, and I'm talking about people other than comic book nerds, people who are like us that are super into all this stuff and watch it. But just like your average Joe who doesn't really pay attention to this kind of stuff, I think if you were to ask him what's the general tone of a comic book movie, they're going to think, oh, it's bright, it's fun, it's, we got some action and stuff. There's some jokes, there's some comedy, there's some humor and stuff. There's a definite feel and aesthetic. Look at the Marvel movies. The Marvel movies have made billions of dollars on that aesthetic, right? It works. That's how people view comic books. But Batman's a little different because Batman feels it looks different. It feels different. It's a little bit more adult in ways. I feel like it's more. People feel it's like more grounded in reality, and so maybe that gets to your point, Ronan, where you're saying like, well, anybody could be Batman, and so maybe that's why they love it so much. But I just think it's. I feel it's like the visual aesthetic of it. That's what brings people to the game, and then they play the game, and they're like, I like this game. I'm going to keep playing. That's what I think, anyway. The end.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us as we talk about, the Batman, but not the Batman movie.
Okay.
The Batman.
So before we get into the Batman, what is your favorite Batman movie? Like, name Ronan. Give me your top three, and leave this one out, the one we're going to talk about out. But pre the Batman, name your top three Batman movies.
Be the Nolan ones. I would put like Dark Knight Rises at the bottom of it, just because it kind of that everyone knows the issues with that movie. But yeah, it'd be Dark Knight, Batman Begins, and then Rises.
Okay, Steve, your top three Batman movies?
Oh, I'll take. I'll go back to the beginning. Michael Keaton, Batman 1, Batman Returns, and then probably The Dark Knight.
Okay, interesting. I would actually go the Dark Knight would probably be my number one. Then I would probably go Batman Returns because I just love Danny DeVito as the Penguin in that, and Christopher Walken. Like I just think that took the first Batman to like another level. I really like
Batman Returns is great, and I feel like that movie does not get enough love.
Oh, I agree. It's awesome. And then my third would actually be Mask of the Phantasm, the Batman animated series one. I really love that.
I was going to make a snarky-ass comment about how it's criminal none of us have brought that movie up while we were discussing the show. Because
it's
that
so
show
good.
got a fucking theatrical movie.
And it bombed. That's the thing, right? Didn't it like do awful in the theaters?
I believe so. But
which is crazy to me.
Didn't it also come out at like a bad time where like I think it came out just when Jurassic Park and shit like that were coming out, I think.
Maybe. I'm not sure the exact release date. But yeah, and considering that Batman the Animated Series was such like it felt like a cultural touchstone for so many, kids. Just maybe it was marketing or something that was bad marketing at the time, but it was just surprising.
Did not make it. I'm looking at it on Wikipedia. It cost $6 million to make and made 5.6 at the box office. So I hope it sold a lot of VHSs because it did not make its money back.
Oh, I'm sure it's had to have made its money back by now, hopefully. But yeah, that I remember watching that movie, and I don't think I saw that in the theater. I had to have watched it on VHS or something when it came out. Because I don't even have a real recollection of seeing commercials for it or trailers or anything on television. Maybe during like actual Saturday morning cartoon block or something, but
I don't either. I was aware that it came out. I know there were trailers for it or advertisement for it, but yeah, I didn't see it in the theaters either. I didn't honestly see it until like Cartoon Network started doing this thing with like I think on Saturdays where they would play like movies, like cartoon movies, and they played Mask of the Phantasm. Like that was the first time I ever saw it.
do you guys think, just kind of circling back to our Joker conversation, do you guys think there's ever been an objectively bad portrayal of the Joker in any sort of medium, whether it's comic books, movies, cartoons, anything?
Notice how no one brought up Jared Leto when you did your whole Joker spiel about how great Joker is. You didn't bring up Jared Leto, and we also did overlook the Joker movie.
The Joaquin Phoenix one?
Yeah.
See, I think Joaquin Phoenix did a fine job in that. I don't think he was a bad Joker.
Yeah, we just that movie that movie's really good. I don't really have an answer to when people say like tell me one way he would stand up to Batman. Like in that, I was like, well, that's not the type of joke. This is an Elseworlds title. Like like this is
Yeah.
like it's not that kind of Joker. Within the world of that movie, it works and he's good.
Well, the Jared Leto thing is interesting because I had actually completely forgotten about it. So maybe that's a
But
maybe
it's for
that's
the
a
best.
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that's
yeah.
a testament to the way it was. I'm trying to think back to the Jared Leto Joker. I remember
You
being
you
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
if you didn't see the Suicide Squad, you wouldn't have seen it because that's the only time it came up.
Yeah, I
The
saw the
first
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the
I
first
saw the
one,
first
yeah,
one.
yeah. And apparently, that move, the David Ayer one was apparently another victim of like the Warner Brothers going back and cutting the movie and turning it into something it wasn't meant to be. Because there is supposedly a different cut of that movie that is very different than the one we got. That is
Yeah.
super bright and colorful, where Jared Leto had like the Joker's plot line was completely different.
I think it was a lot bigger, right? Like there was a
I,
much bigger role for the Joker in it. I remember, like, I think the problem with Jared Leto's Joker is not necessarily the acting portion of it, because I think if you really look at what he did, and he's even in the Zack Snyder re-release of Justice League, that 8-hour cut or whatever, they have a whole
yeah.
scene with him and Batman, I guess, kind of like in the future, in that. But if you go back and look and think about the Jared Leto Joker, I don't think he acted poorly. I think he came across, he was definitely doing a unique new kind of take on it. I think what most people were really upset about was the visual look of the Joker, with like all the tattoos and the face tats and the silver teeth and all that. I think people really just did not like that.
That yeah, I didn't, and it's weird. It's weird to say like that's just too on the nose. That's way too like it's not. There's nothing subtle about that, which I understand is Joker. It's he's a fucking clown. How can that be subtle? But I mean like he's got like the tattoo was on on his forehead, and the ha ha thing on his head. Like, that's cringe. That Joker is a cringy Joker. Wherein you look at like the Heath Ledger's Joker, who looks very strung out and threatening, and Jack Nicholson's Joker, while first glance doesn't appear threatening, there is a malice and a menace to his performance. Jared Leto just comes across in the way that the portrayal was in the movie, has somebody who's trying way too hard to be cool.
I can see that. I can see that. So I guess that would be the exception, right? Jared Leto's Joker. I think most people didn't like it. I would say that I don't think the performance is as bad. It's just trying to get past the look of the Joker. I think it was so far removed from what people sort of expect the Joker to look like, that maybe that hampered them being able to give like the performance of it. I think my main problem with like the Suicide Squad and introducing the Joker and Harley Quinn and all that is I wanted to actually see a Joker Harley Quinn story in live action, like leading up to that. I didn't want it to just already be that story's already told. And we'll talk a little bit about spoiler alert, everybody. Joker is in the Batman, the actual theatrical cut, very briefly. We'll talk about that. But then recently, I think just a day or two ago, Matt Reeves released an actual scene. It was like a 5-minute long scene that was cut from the movie. So we can talk about that a little bit before we go into the film. But Steve, did you watch that 5-minute scene of the Joker that they released?
No. I
Oh,
did
okay.
not give a shit about the Joker in this movie.
Okay.
My
Way to do your
interest in
show
this
prep,
movie
Steve.
was hanging on by a thread.
Okay, we'll get there. Ronan, did you watch that 5-minute scene?
I did, and I remember when people were upset about the the trailer for Dark Knight Rises and how they couldn't understand Bane. Like I never got that because he always seemed audible and clear. I watched that thing twice. I watched it on my phone and then I watched it on the TV with the sound bar and everything. I can't understand a fair chunk of what that motherfucker's saying just because of the way the audio is kind of mixed and stuff.
I
I can't. I
agree.
like.
Yeah, I thought the audio was mixed really weird too. He does. I think it's
He's got like this weird lisp too that like and it's got like this audio reverbing thing because he's in a prison and he's talking through that little
yeah.
box and there's an echo and he's got a lisp and there's a audio mix is bad, so it's hard to hear most of what he's saying.
I definitely agree with that. I actually had to watch it a few times, and I turned the volume of my television way up because I'm like, what exactly is he saying there? Because that's one of the big problems with movies. It's like I understand when directors like Christopher Nolan's big on this, but I remember it was Tenet. I don't know if you guys saw Tenet, but you can't hear half of the dialogue that's going on in Tenet the way that the sound mix is. And I remember it being this big sort of point of contention where people like you can't hear what's going on. And this movie is supposedly kind of confusing, and you got to be able to follow the plot. But if you can't actually hear the actors, then what are you doing here? You got to make it so people could hear it. And I remember the first time I watched that scene, I was like, what is he saying? Because he's kind of like, you're right, because his face is all fucked up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it literally looks like he dumped acid all over his face. And so clearly the way he talks is due to the damage and the injuries he has suffered. But yeah, I agree with you. At first, I was like, "What is he saying?" I had to rewatch it, turn the volume all the way up, and even then, there were certain points I'm like, "What did he say?" It's almost like you need the subtitles on it or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. But where are my subtitles, YouTube? Come
Yeah.
on now.
So Ronan, what did you think of that incarnation of the Joker? Does that make you excited for a sequel containing the Joker, or were you like, this is not what I'm into here?
It's not that I'm not into it. More or less, what it is just kind of it's honestly it's like it's also kind of ties into my like the thing that does bother me about the movie. It's overall is it's like, do we really have to do this again? I mean, you're just gonna jump right back. You're gonna we instantly have to do the Joker again in the second movie again. We can't do something new and
Yeah, give me
interesting.
Clayface.
Yeah.
Something
We,
like
we,
that. Yeah.
yeah, we can't get a take on a different villain. No, no, we have to go with the Joker. And I understand, you have to because he's the Joker for everything we've already discussed. But can't that wait for movie three? So can it wait? Can't you build this up a little longer? But
Yeah,
no.
I 100% agree with you. I think that I mean everybody loves the Joker, and I know why. As a filmmaker, right? I'm sure Matt Reeves loves the Joker, and he's like, man, I really can't wait to make a movie with Joker in it. I can also understand people 7-2 offsuit. Nice, Steve. I can also understand, how I was just saying earlier. Nobody bitches and complains when there's a new Batman movie out with a brand new Batman. Like
That's
Spider-Man.
true.
Oh God, didn't we just have us Andrew Garfield? Now we're having Tom Holland. Well, no one says that whenever there's a new Batman movie, but now people are saying that when there's a new Joker. So I think that's kind of interesting, where we've kind of come full circle. Batman seems to be kind of immune to people criticizing that there is a new actor playing Batman, and we're going to get to see that. Whereas people are criticizing, well, we just had Joaquin Phoenix, and we just had Jared Leto, and we had all these, now we have a brand new Joker. I don't think you can really tell the story of Batman without the Joker. I think it's necessary, and what I liked about this scene was they already had their fight. I mean, the Joker basically is like, "Hey, you're visiting me on our 1 year anniversary." So we know that in year one, this version of Batman has already fought the Joker and has already won. And it's almost like, man, I'd like to see that story. I would like to see how this guy sort of, fought Batman, and what a year one Batman how did he react to facing the Joker? But we're not going to get to see that story, which is kind of interesting to me. I'll ask you a question, Ronan. Do you think it was a good idea that they cut this scene out of the final film?
Yes, just like the length of the movie doesn't bother me, but at the same time, this doesn't really add anything to it. I don't like adding this scene in wouldn't have suddenly made this dawning oh kind of moment towards the end of the movie when you do see him.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a neat homage. It's like again, I've read Long Halloween. I'm aware of like what this scene is representing. How when Batman goes to Arkham to have a talk with the Joker. Like I know what this is representing, but at the same time, it's like it doesn't help. There's a reason it was cut. It messes up the flow.
It's very Hannibal Lecter, Clarice, talking to Hannibal and trying to get, for Steve, who you haven't seen it, it's basically Batman going to Joker and giving him all the files of everything that's gone on in the movie and asking the Joker for his opinion on what he thinks is going on. And basically the Joker figures everything out in like 2 seconds. He's like, this is what's going on, and I can't believe you haven't figured this out yet, you idiot. And I saw an interesting YouTube discussion on this scene, and it's shot really cool. Like, I love how it's all, like, the Joker's out of focus, and normally I hate that stuff. Like, I hate out of focus stuff, but I liked how they did it here, where you don't quite see him. I mean, his head, he is fucked up. I mean, he looks, when they finally show his mouth and stuff, he is carved up. He's got, he looks like he's been through a meat grinder, which is a different visual look for the Joker than we've seen in any movie before. He's kind of like a horror movie character, kind of like what you would imagine, I don't know, what's a horror movie character that would have a really fucked up face? I don't know, something like you would think that maybe, I don't know.
Leatherface, Jason.
Yeah, kinda. It's not
Freddy,
quite.
the guy with the burned face.
No, it's not quite like Freddy. It's not burned. It's, I don't know. There's something I'm thinking of. I just can't think of it off the top of my head.
You said that he looked like his face had been scarred up with acid. I think it looks like he's got some kind of like flesh-eating disease or something like some sickness that has done that to him. Maybe he was born with it, or he got it when he was a kid, and that's kind of the reasoning for why he is the way he is. But that was the thing when I saw it.
Does he look like Deadpool, like without his mask?
Kind of.
Sorta.
I'm sort of thinking of like
off.
Mason Verger from Hannibal. If you've seen that movie where Gary Oldman, when after Hannibal cuts his face off, and he's all scarred and stuff as the new skin is trying to grow over, he kind of looks like that. He's just got patches of hair. Like they show like a shot of the back of his head, and it's all lumpy, and you can tell it was all. You could tell he was like burned somehow, whether it's by acid or fire or something, and it's been long enough, like the skin has healed over, so it's all, he just got like a mush face, basically. I do think the scene is really, really cool. Like, I was like, wow, this is neat. I did see an interesting thing on YouTube, though. A YouTuber was discussing this, and their argument for why it should not have been in the film and that it was a good reason for it to be cut is the film itself, and we could talk about, it's very different in that Batman is the detective in this, right?
Oh, are we actually going to talk about this movie tonight?
Yeah, let's talk about this movie. So let's segue into The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. Batman is presented as an actual detective in this, right? He shows up at crime scenes, he's putting the clues together, and this YouTuber said Joker solves this thing in 5 seconds. Batman literally hands him all these files, and Joker opens it up, and he completely figures out everything. And this was apparently supposed to be put in before Batman goes and sees the Riddler, because it's in Arkham Asylum. So apparently this was supposed to be right before his interaction with the Riddler at the end in Arkham. And It doesn't make any sense because number one, you're defeating the whole point of your movie, and maybe Steve, you have a criticism of this, so maybe you disagree that this is what the movie was successfully did. But Batman as a detective, Joker makes him look like a complete fool. Joker even literally says, "Have you not read this thing yet?" When he's like, "This is what it is. This is everything that's going on." And oh, by the way, Batman, you are the main course here. You're the one that the Riddler's going after. You dumb idiot.
Well, the Riddler says the exact same thing, so that sounds very redundant compared to Batman's confrontation with Riddler.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If this was going to be done before the Riddler, they're so similar. Those scenes are so similar to one another, and basically, it's the Joker's already explaining the movie to everybody before the main villain actually gets to do it. So that was kind of their reason to cut it because it didn't quite make sense.
Yeah. It's like when you saying that's like, oh, it's supposed to happen before that moment, especially knowing like why before that moment, especially considering how like as the film is like within continuity of the film, Batman is certain that Riddler is about to out him as Bruce Wayne. He's certain that this is about to happen. Why would he go talk to the Joker before he talks to? That's really dumb. If that's actually where it's supposed to happen in the film, that's really dumb.
Yeah, I don't even know where else it would fit in the film. Maybe early on or something. But even if they put it a lot earlier, Joker's still solving the entire movie early on. And maybe the filmmakers were like, we don't want the Joker like figuring this whole thing out for the audience. They might have wanted the audience to keep sort of guessing and figuring that stuff out. But all right, let's talk about the Batman. Steve, why don't you go ahead and just give us a high-level synopsis of the Batman? Spoilers, people, if you haven't seen the Batman, don't listen to this. We're going to spoil the shit out of it, obviously. Not that we haven't already. Give me a high-level synopsis, Steve, of what is the Batman about?
The Riddler is tired of corruption in the police force and basically the entire legal side of Gotham. He puts together a bunch of riddles that to kind of lead Batman along, but at the same time he's killing like the DAs and the prosecutors and the top level cops and whatnot because they're all dirty. Simultaneously, Catwoman is trying to rescue one of her friends, and when that friend ends up dead, she begins seeking revenge against one of the crime bosses. Batman's trying to keep her from crossing that line, and also Batman is there.
Yes, Batman is in the Batman. Spoiler. All right, well, I want to wait for Steve because Steve's got things to say about this movie. Ronan, what are your thoughts on the Batman?
I've said this in the Discord chat and everything before. I like this movie. It's a very well done movie. All the acting is top notch. For the most part, the cinematography is great. The soundtrack is baller. It's all very good, and it's all to the service of a Batman movie that you can play out in your mind. Every Batman thing you can think of happens in this for the most part. It's it's yet another dark, gritty, grimy Batman movie like the last fucking 3 that we had, 4 if you include the Joker. It's just another realistic take on Batman, and I am over it. And I would,
You are over it. Okay. How would you like them to do a Batman? Do you want to go back to like the Schumacher campier times of Batman?
No.
Like, what do you want?
No, just watch the Batman the animated series and fucking do that. It's not too fucking hard.
Well, let me say something about this. Like, the reason that I put the Michael Keaton movies up on a pedestal are like, I feel like those movies, even though it's just Batman and 1 or 2 villains, and I don't know how exactly to describe this, but I feel like those movies take place in a comic book world, whereas discounting the Joel Schumacher movies, everything that's come since then has tried to be realistic Batman, and I don't want realistic Batman.
Yeah, it was an interesting take for like the Nolan movies to do. I want to do a Batman that's grounded in the real world. Okay, we've got that trilogy. It's like, like those movies are good. We've had those out for a while. Can we go back to something that is dark and serious because that is the way Batman's character is? But can we also have a world in which a molten pile of clay can exist that can talk and transform and wants to steal and wants to rob the bank? Can we have a movie where that
Yeah.
We just
exists?
want Man Bat. We want Clayface. That's what we want.
I
Can
do.
we
That's
have
absolutely what I want. Like this movie and even the Christopher Nolan movies, like, they have the same premise as basically Kick-Ass. Like, what if someone in the real world tried to be a superhero? And that's not what I want. I want these movies to exist in a comic book world where there's other superheroes out there doing things. I want the crazy look. I don't want dark and gritty anymore. I
Yeah,
don't need this much realism in a superhero movie.
Yeah, we've seen this. We've seen this for 15, 20 years now. I would can we get a little slice of comic book into our comic book Batman movie where a billionaire dresses up like a bat and for some reason and decides to beat people up in the street.
Yeah, Batman is the only one allowed to look like someone from the comic books in a Batman movie over the last, 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. And I like this movie. This is a fine Batman movie. It's really good. I scroll through all my YouTube feed, and it's mostly people saying that this is a masterpiece. This is film of the year. This is, without a doubt, the perfect Batman movie. It's the greatest one ever made. It's like, no, it's really good. But at the same time, it's like, it is like, no, that's going way too fucking far. This is just a solid, really good Batman movie. It's a good foundation for more, but at the same time, I'm over this shit. I want something that again can allow for a character like Croc to exist. Can I get Croc? Can I get the ventriloquist? Why can't this happen?
Okay. I will say that for this movie in particular, because it's 3 hours long. For anyone who hasn't seen it yet, I was kind of dreading it a little bit because unlike something like Avengers Endgame or Infinity War, that's like an event that has been built to over 10 movies. So I'm like, okay, give me 8 hours of this if you need to. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going in expecting. I want it to be long, right? I wanted Spider-Man No Way Home to be 2 hours and 35 minutes or whatever.
Give me that girthy Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it's like Doctor Strange 2 is coming up, right? We're going to have a show about that in the future. And I want Doctor Strange 2 to be long. Give me as much Sam Raimi in my eyeballs as I can possibly handle. That's what I want.
Oh, good. That means that we get to have an hour discussion about our first exposure to Doctor Strange and our overall feelings about Doctor Strange, and then rank our top 3 Doctor Stranges.
No, we're going to rank our top Sam Raimi movies, Steve. That's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Evil Dead and then segue into Doctor Strange 2.
Wonderful.
Because that's all anybody's going to bring up with Sam Raimi.
So I was kind of like, oh man, 3 hours on this. It didn't feel like 3 hours to me when I was watching it. It felt it felt long. You could tell it was long. I definitely think it's 20 minutes-ish, at least too long. They could have cut a bunch of that stuff out, in my estimation. But I didn't feel like as I was watching it, I wonder how long I've been sitting here. I was engaged the whole thing. I agree with you, Ronan. I think the acting was all really good. I thought Robert Pattinson was really good as Batman. People were like, oh, he's a Twilight guy, but he's actually a really awesome actor. If you guys not seen The Lighthouse, watch it, because it's fucking crazy. And Willem Dafoe, by the way, is amazing. We need Willem Dafoe in a Batman movie. Give me some more Willem Dafoe.
So you want Batman versus Green Goblin?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe in anything makes whatever he's in better. He's Willem Dafoe. I actually saw, getting back to our Joker conversation, I actually saw, I don't know if it was a meme or something, that people actually took his crazy face from as Norman from the original Spider-Man movie, but photoshopped him as the Joker with that, and it looks awesome. So you should look at that. I was like, I can imagine Willem Dafoe being an awesome Joker, honestly. But overall, I like this movie. I didn't really have any major problems with it, other than I thought it was a little too long. I think if there's one thing I could have done without, it was probably all the Catwoman stuff. Like, I didn't feel like... I mean, I didn't have any problem with it, but I also didn't think that Catwoman was necessary in this movie. If you're showing me a Batman that's like in year 2, a very early Batman, I don't need all of these other characters. Like, can you give me the first movie? It's just Batman versus the Riddler, without any sort of love interest, drama going on and all of that stuff. And I know that's part of Batman's character, his relationship with Catwoman and stuff like that. But I totally agree with you, Ronan, where it's like, hey, this doesn't need to be like, we don't need Joker right now in the very first movie. Why can't you do the Riddler once, maybe the Penguin? Penguin. Colin Farrell was awesome as a Penguin, by the way. He was he was totally cool as a Penguin. But give me like another Batman villain, and maybe in the third movie, whoever said that, go ahead and then introduce the Joker, right? And make that
everyone wants the third part of the trilogy to be the great, incredible finale, and I feel like when's the last time like the third part of a trilogy really hit as well as the first or the second movie?
Yeah, and you can have little teases to the Joker, right? Like in Batman Begins, we don't see the Joker. Just the very end is like, hey, here's the cards, and you're like, okay, the Joker's coming. Wouldn't it have been great? I mean, obviously Heath Ledger passed away, but wouldn't it be awesome if the Dark Knight had been the third, and maybe in that second film they do a completely different villain, but maybe you just get a brief glimpse of what Joker's there, and then in the third film you get the Joker. But Dark Knight's still awesome. I still love that.
In fairness, they might be doing that. They have not said for certain that, like, oh yeah, Joker's going to be the main character of the second movie. They haven't said that yet. So in fairness, that could very well be what happens. Is that like he is in the next one, but it's very tailored back, and you can just kind of see that, like, he's plotting something. Like that
Maybe.
that something similar to that could be happening. We don't know.
Well, they're doing an Arkham Asylum TV show, so I know they're building this world on HBO Max. So Colin Farrell has a Penguin show that's coming out that's going to show his rise as the Penguin. So my guess is in the second Batman movie, you're going to see more of the Penguin. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is it just going to be like Arkham? The typical thing, everyone's going to break out of Arkham.
That just sounds like Gotham again.
Yeah.
I liked Gotham. Did you guys watch Gotham? I actually liked most of it. It got pretty wonky towards the end.
I watched like the first 2, maybe 3 seasons, and just kind of fell out of it.
Yeah, that's the same for me. I watched it. I didn't hate it. I was like, this is all right. This is all right, but never enough to keep watching it. But yeah, that show was all right.
The guy that they had play the Joker, they did a really weird thing with the Joker. So, I mean, it's too complicated to try to explain on this podcast without me refreshing all the weird details. But the dude who was, I think it's the guy who plays Cal Kestis in the Fallen Order video game.
Yeah,
he played the Joker in this, but they did this weird thing where the Joker had... you never could really tell if he was the real Joker, and then I think they had a thing where he had a brother, and they tried to make it look like, well, maybe the brother turns out to be the real Joker. It was this really weird thing. I don't really like how the storyline went on it. However, him playing the Joker, like the classic sort of crazy laugh Joker, was really, really good. You could check out some clips of him on YouTube doing it, and a lot of people I remember saying at the time was like, can you just make him the Joker in the movies going forward? Kind of like how people say, can you just make Grant Gustin be the Flash? Why do we have to have Ezra Miller as the Flash? Just make Grant Gustin. We know Grant Gustin's good at it. But I want to throw it to Steve here. Now, Steve, you've been waiting patiently for however many hours while we circle or wind our way to the Batman. You did not like the Batman as much as the general public. So tell me your thoughts on the Batman and why you weren't into it.
Yeah, I think when I first commented in our Discord, I said something like I hated it. I thought about it since then, and I don't hate it. It's like a kind of a perfectly average movie. The main thing to me was I could not take this Batman seriously. And you guys keep saying that everything was super well acted. I disagree. I don't know if it's Robert Pattinson or if I just disliked the writing or the direction of this character, but I couldn't take Batman seriously in this Batman movie. As soon as Batman started speaking, I felt his voice sounded really whiny rather than intimidating. And then right around the time that thought is formulating, he drops an unironic "You're not my dad" on Alfred. And at that point, like, I'm watching a Batman. I'm watching a Batman with the emotional maturity of like a 14-year-old stepkid. And then as I'm thinking that, Matt's not gonna have any idea what I'm talking about, but Ronan will know who I'm referencing here. Anytime he spoke, be it as Batman or Bruce Wayne, all I could think about was skinny, wimpy Broly from Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and it ruined it for me. Like, I could not take this guy seriously. He sounded whiny rather than intimidating. The other part that I disliked was Matt's already referenced this. Like, we didn't need everyone in this movie. You didn't need Catwoman and Riddler, or Riddler and Penguin. I felt about this movie the same way I felt about Daredevil Season 2. Daredevil Season 2, you got Punisher and also Elektra, and at the end they tie all of that together. But I just wanted one or the other. Like, give me a season all about Punisher or a season all about Elektra. This movie should have been about Batman versus the Riddler, or alternatively, Batman trying to keep Catwoman from crossing the line, not both. Having both in the movie and tying it together doesn't make your movie better. It just makes your movie 3 hours.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And to speak to your sort of like the lack of intimidation factor for this Batman, I did think it was interesting is when Batman's like introduced like in the suit, they do this thing where it's like loud footsteps, right? Like these heavy footsteps coming from the darkness, and you're like, okay, oh shit. I mean, they wanted to make that feeling of, the criminals are scared, they're terrified, and, maybe the audience wants to get that intimidation factor because you're hearing Batman sort of walk in all dramatically. But then you see Robert Pattinson, and I don't know if it's just because he is kind of skinny, but you're right. He doesn't come across, like, if you look at Ben Affleck's Batman, he's like giant, right? He's like a huge hulking monster
of a man, and you see him like hitting a tire with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
He punches dudes literally punch in the face so hard that you go through the fucking floor.
Yeah, he looks like, he's like Superman or something. He's just giant and buff, whereas this Batman obviously is much skinnier. I mean, he looks like he has not been lifting 400-pound weights and doing curls every morning or anything like that. So when he sort of like originally came out of the darkness, now that you mention it, I did sort of I did recognize him. Like, he doesn't look as intimidating as they tried to make him out to be, with the footsteps.
I didn't have a problem with
his.
I didn't have a problem with his like physical appearance or not being intimidating. It was the voice and his demeanor, and again, telling Alfred, "You're not my dad," when he's like damn near 30 years old. There's a scene where he's going to the Penguins Club, and he's dressed as Batman. He's not going there as Bruce Wayne, but he just knocks on the door to the Penguins Club and wants to get in, and the the doorman says something like, get out of here or your suit's going to be covered in blood. And Batman, the line Batman delivers is, yours or mine or yours, something like that. But when he's delivering this line, he's like got his head tilted and he's almost like looking down into his chest, like he's shy Batman. Like, I could not take it seriously, and it ruined a significant chunk of the movie for me.
And that's
You're
weird.
not my dad, Alfred.
And that's bad because Batman is Batman for most of this movie. I mean, you don't see Robert
yeah,
Pattinson very
I'm
much.
aware.
Bruce Wayne's barely in it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I like that. I like that, and there absolutely are parts of this movie that I liked. Like I loved that Batman got to be a detective. I loved that Batman was going out to crime scenes and investigating alongside the police didn't like him, but still he's kind of operating alongside the cops instead of against them, which was a big part of Dark Knight and Batman Begins for a long time. I love that. Like, I could have given me more Batman being a detective and working crime scenes. It's hard to enjoy a Batman movie from start to finish when you don't like the Batman.
but, like I honestly don't have any issue with like Pattinson's voice, and I don't remember him kind of looking down when he was saying the whole like yours or mine. I'm pretty sure he was staring the dude in the face. You are
You're
right
wrong.
though. You are right though in that Robert Pattinson is. I'd heard this story like a year and a half or so ago because this movie got delayed because of COVID. I'd heard that he was difficult to deal with on the set because they wanted him to bulk up for the role, and he was just kind of like in that kind of way that doesn't help get the Twilight sort of thing off of him, which is kind of like, no, I don't have to. James Dean never had to bulk up for a role. Why should I? And it's like
I like that
was more or
voice,
less
Ronan.
that was more or less his attitude. So like the suit is padded to make him when he's out, because there's that scene when he's pushing the table and like he's not wearing a shirt, and I was like this was a bad, because I thought it was the Riddler. I thought we had switched perspective to the Riddler, which happens a couple of times in this movie where that's a thematic thing that the movie gets right. I'll get back to this in a bit. But like when he's pushing that big table and he's like spray painting like shit on the floor and whatnot, like after Alfred's in the hospital and he doesn't have a shirt on, I'm just sort of like, I can see how when you wrote this scene, you were picturing like Christian Bale, who put on like 150 pounds of muscle for the role, or you're picturing Ben Affleck, who's turned into this like gigantic mountain of meat.
Roid monster.
I can tell that's what you were picturing when you were writing this role, and then you get Robert Pattinson, who just refuses to work out to get
Or his
jacked for the role.
stupid, sad emo bangs hanging in front of his eyes anytime he was Bruce Wayne and it's raining.
Have you noticed that they do that thing in movies all the time? Like they did that in Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, right? When you're sort of emo and sad, you just put the bangs in front of your eyes.
That's exactly what I thought. Like Bully Maguire, getting possessed by the symbiote and messing with his hair. That was the exact thought that entered my head when I saw Bruce Wayne with his bangs plopped down in front of his eyes.
You know what? Like, when I watched this movie, something that made me think to myself, "Oh God, this isn't good," was the movie opens up and like your Riddler is. It turns out it's Riddler. At first, I thought it was Batman, but that was interesting how it's like the two of them are essentially doing the same shit, which is thematically the thing is that Batman and the Riddler are kind of the same, but so you see that scene, and then suddenly it shifts, and you get this voiceover of Batman, and I start to chuckle, and I start laughing in this theater full of people, and I'm laughing because my thought over this, supposed to be dramatic, edgy, Nirvana's playing in the background, sort of scene where he's talking about, I can't be everywhere at once. I'm thinking of the fucking coon from South Park with Eric Cartman doing these voiceovers. Certain aspects of Batman's motique have become comical. Just from like cultural parody, and it's like that overly dramatic voiceover both times it happens in the movie made me laugh out loud because I started thinking of how it's been parodied in various other things. It's like, don't ever have Batman doing that again, because that's funny now. You can't. That doesn't set up the atmosphere. That took me out, and that made me laugh.
Yeah, Matt
Something
Reeves.
else that Matt Reeves, 3 Matts here. Something else that I disliked about the movie, and this is a criticism of like kind of superhero movies overall, and will continue to be a criticism going forward. And this kind of goes back to let the comic book movie have comic book elements. Give the damn villains their outfits. Like The Riddler is wearing a do-it-yourself gimp suit throughout this entire movie, and I hated it. Marvel MCU made Mysterio and his fucking fishbowl look awesome. There is no excuse anymore to not let the supervillains have their outfits.
And yet they didn't give me the Electro that I wanted. No one will give me the Electro I want to see.
Make that look cool, Matt. There's no way to
disagree.
Make that
You
look
can
cool.
make,
You shut your mouth, Ronan.
I believe you can make any supervillain outfit look cool if you put enough effort into it. They did it with Mysterio. This movie, just fucking copped out when it came to the Riddler. I liked the Riddler as a character. I hated this stupid non-outfit that they had him in.
There's no way that Riddler's green question mark outfit would have worked with the tone of this, because this Riddler, I didn't realize this sort of stuff until I watched some YouTube videos, because I hadn't heard of the Batman Earth 1 comic book line, but that's what this Riddler is based off of, and apparently in the Earth 1 comic book line, he is like that. He is just a mad bomber who's basically wearing a sack over his head.
And that's stupid. But that is not the Riddler to turn into a movie.
The green question mark suit would not have worked in this. It would
Don't
not
care.
have worked.
They could have made it work. 100%. I believe that filmmakers at this point, they made Mysterio look cool. You can make any villain outfit work.
But I think what Ronan's saying is you can make the Mysterio costume look awesome in a Marvel Spider-Man movie, because the Marvel movies with their tone and so look at Thor, right? People expect wild and kind of zany costumes in a film like that. But if you're trying to tone something down, something that's really kind of ridiculous, right? I think it's harder to get the audience to take the character as seriously if he's got a bunch of question marks all over his body.
I disagree. I think to the end of this movie where the Riddler has his finally face-to-face meeting with Batman, and the Riddler sees Batman as this kindred spirit. There could have been a scene, 100%, where Riddler's you and I, we're in this together. We are on the same side. You get me. Look, I made an outfit too. And he could have had some sort of version of the Riddler outfit that is not a gimp mask.
That's more or less what he did thematically in this movie, because as he's talking to him, he's like, you inspired me. And he also says, I wish you could have seen me in my mask. It's not as cool as yours. He wanted to be Batman. He just didn't know how, because he's just a 4chan troll. That's all he is.
He should have put more effort into his costume.
And you go to Mysterio. It's Quentin Beck made that outfit over the top and wild because that's what the Marvel universe was expecting. Whoever this character, because he's got these different names and they don't ever actually call him Edward Nigma, but this Riddler isn't that. This Riddler is a shut-in, weird, awkward. He's what today's kind of more Gen Zers are. He's kind of like Jeff. He's a 4chan, 8chan troll.
Oh yeah. Wow. So you're saying the Riddler's like Jeff? Okay, I was gonna say they just made the Riddler a weird serial killing incel or something like that. That's how I got it.
That's exactly it. That's the Moss Shooter guy from Australia a couple years ago. Yeah, was a 4chan troll. The Walmart El Paso shooter, that was some kid on 4chan who left his manifesto there. That's what Riddler was doing here, where he had his forum and he's talking to them and he has his wimpy voice. Hey guys, what's up? And he's talking in his mask, so it sounds stupid, but he thinks it looks cool in the 500 people who are in his forum. That's what he is. I understood that. I got that because I've been following up on these QAnon people. And that's what they all are. So it's that part made sense to me. It's okay, I get this. This is a good take.
If the
So,
argument is the Riddler outfit could not work in this world with this movie's tone, then my argument is the Riddler was not the right villain for this. Put Hush in the role. The Hush is the Riddler in one continuity out there. Don't put a character with a gaudy outfit in your comic book movie if you're not going to let them have that outfit.
well, let me ask you this. Batman has had lots of different costumes, right? So the Batman in this doesn't look like the costume that Batman wears in Batman the Animated Series, for example. So would you say, hey, Batman's not wearing his traditional sort of bluish costume with his, underpants on, and that's not classic Batman, so you'd have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that because Batman is still wearing something that is recognizably a Batman suit. The Riddler is wearing a gimp mask and a sack.
Doesn't he have like a big question mark on it or something though? I thought like he has something on his chest that's like
If he
one
did,
question mark. Or
I did
something.
not see it.
He might.
Also,
but, like,
this movie is dark as fuck, and I could barely see anything.
It is
no,
very
no,
dark.
it's not. Yeah, it is, but I can see stuff in it fine.
You just got to open your eyes, Steve. You'll be able to see just fine.
Clearly,
it's not
but again,
Alien
that's
versus
not
Predator
necessarily
Requiem bad.
that's not a criticism of this movie, but superhero movies going forward. They got Mysterio right. There's no excuse anymore. If you have a tone that you think does not allow for a supervillain in a crazy supervillain costume, then pick a different villain or pick a villain that is not known for an outrageous outfit.
Well, I mean, again, they more modeled this Riddler after Zodiac and after Riddler from Earth One,
And they got it wrong.
No, where he is portrayed where he is portrayed more like this.
Yeah, and that's a stupid Riddler to adapt for a movie.
So your argument is
But it's a comic book Riddler.
The only version of the Riddler that can ever be shown on screen is the Riddler who's got question marks and a hat and a cane and kind of like the Jim Carrey version.
That's the only Riddler that I want. That's the only Riddler I want to see in a movie about the Riddler.
I don't think I can agree with that. I actually thought the Riddler was really cool in this movie, honestly. I will say that
his character was cool. I disliked his appearance.
I can kind of see that. I think that the appearance thing didn't bother me as much just because I think I agree with Ronan that the tone that this was going for, it was something completely different. And plus, this is something like, this is early on. So circling back around to sort of Robert Pattinson, I don't know how old he's supposed to be in this movie. I thought he was supposed to be kind of like maybe mid-20s.
His parents died 20 years ago, and I think canonically Batman's usually around 8 when that happened. So I had him pegged at 28, 29. I don't think they actually give his age, but at one point they clearly say his parents died 20 years ago.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with your criticism. Like, well, Batman in this movie, he's not intimidating or anything like that. You could make the argument that, I mean, this is year 2 of Batman, right? He's still super young. He's still trying to figure stuff out in a way. And maybe we're so used to seeing Batman as like a 40-year-old grizzled dude. Or, like, who do we have? I mean, we had Jack Nicholson. He was probably in his 50s when he made that. You had like Val Kilmer, you had George Clooney. These guys were probably in their late 30s, 40s when they played Batman. You had Christian Bale. He's probably in his 40s when he played Batman. We've only ever really known older Batman. That's all we've ever really seen. So I think like this was actually kind of a refreshing take on it to see sort of a younger Batman. Yeah, of course he's mopey. Even Alfred points out how, mopey he is. But by the end of the movie, they actually establish that Batman's like, oh, I can't be like this, just mopey, emo douche this entire, like, I can't save Gotham if I'm gonna be like this. They have the whole thing with hope at the very end, right? That's kind of like the whole thing with the movie. He's like, I gotta be the symbol of hope for the city to rally around me. It's kind of like the opposite of Christopher Nolan's, when basically, when Two-Face, Harvey Dent dies, whatever, and he's like, I gotta let the city hate me. I'll take that weight on my shoulder, and everyone's gotta hate Batman. I did not like that aspect of it because I was like, I think generally in the comic books, obviously, when you talk about comic books, there are a million different stories. Yes, anybody out there listening can be like, well, actually, I know this comic book run where this didn't happen. Yeah, we get it. I'm talking about just the general consensus of what people expect of the lore of Batman, and I'm pretty sure, at least everything I've always read, the people of Gotham City actually love Batman in most stories. Like, they support Batman trying to protect them from all these psychopaths that are murdering them and stuff like that. So I didn't like in the Nolan stuff is where they basically had everybody kind of turn against him. I always thought that was really kind of shitty. But I like at this one where Batman actually kind of has an arc. And at the end of it, he's like, okay, I got to do it a different way. So I think going forward, you might actually see the Riddler show up in the next movie with his classic costume. Maybe the Joker is not actually the Joker quite yet, right? They didn't name him as the Joker or anything in this movie. So you might still see that. It might just be like, this is all brand new. These are when these first came. I mean, you didn't see Penguin in his classic Penguin outfit in this movie. He wasn't wearing a top hat and a monocle with a cane and a suit with a white shirt or anything like that. I didn't have a problem with Penguin not looking like traditional comic book Penguin. Even Danny DeVito didn't look like traditional comic book Penguin. He looked like a monster of some sort. It even mentions that. He was literally part penguin in that movie, wasn't he? Didn't he have flipper hands and stuff?
He had flippers and a big nose.
Yeah, flippers and a big nose. That was not comic book accurate. So I would disagree with that.
Deformed, yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree with your disagreement.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
What Matt was talking about, how this is an early Batman, early take on all the characters. It's Matt Reeves has even said that in some interviews, how it's none of these characters are who they're going to end up being yet, because they're all still working this out. That was the interesting thing with Batman. This is a Batman who actually fucks up. He he gets the Riddler's riddle very, very wrong. And that was a great moment when he's talking, him and Gordon are interrogating the Penguin, and they're like, Loretta, and he's like, Loretta, that's the worst Spanish I've ever fucking heard. Because the Penguin figured out that they were reading that wrong. And then when he's doing his his wingsuit thing, when he's fleeing the police station, he gets that wrong. He fucks it up and ends up crashing into a bus.
Yeah,
but he
reminded me of a flying squirrel when he pulled that thing. I was like, oh, it's Squirrel Man flying through the city.
Well, maybe my argument then is just that I've long since got past the point where I ever need to see an origin story for certain characters. Spider-Man, never need to know his origin again. Hulk, never need to hear about the Gamma Bomb again. I'm the same way with Batman. I know what happened to Batman. I know what happened to Batman to make him Batman. Show me a movie. I guess I just want more of just Batman being competent Batman. I watched Gotham. I watched Batman Year One. I no longer feel the need to watch a Batman that struggles to be Batman. Maybe this movie just wasn't for me.
You want an older Batman who is at the peak performance of his game, and everyone around him is in their comic book accurate.
I want early Batman the Animated Series Batman, which is what that was.
Again, the disagreement about the Riddler's outfit aside, I do agree with Steve. When I was saying, I'm over this. It's that's what I want. Give me a Batman movie that, yes, it is dark. It is bleak because that is Batman's character. It has established after Dark Knight Returns or whatever that comic book was that made Batman go back to being dark instead of the Justice Friends Batman from the '60s.
When's the last time we had a Batman movie where Batman was in his prime? Was it just The Dark Knight? Because in Batman Begins, he's young and upcoming, kind of same as this here. In Dark Knight Rises, he's 10 years older and gets his ass kicked. And then everything with Ben Affleck was Batman, 20 years after he retired from being Batman. So maybe I do just want peak Batman.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's a good point. I can't think of. I mean, maybe. Well, no. Because I was trying to think, is there anything in the DCEU that establishes like a younger peak? Maybe some of the flashback scenes in Suicide Squad with Batman going after the Joker or something. I don't know. But I think I agree with you that it's just we've never really seen that. I mean, the Schumacher movies, maybe even Michael Keaton was old. I mean, Michael Keaton was an older gentleman. That's a good point. I hadn't really considered that. When have we seen?
I think it's just
like Batman Year 10 is what you want. You want Batman Year 10.
The Dark Knight is probably the last time we got that. I realized that Christian Bale in real life was older at the time, but we had a Batman that had already gone through his origin, but he was still young enough to, fight off the Joker and everyone else that was in that movie. That might be... Dark Knight might be the only time I have actually seen the Batman that I want to see in live action. The only reason I don't rate it as highly is because, again, it doesn't feel like it takes place in a comic book world.
Yeah, that's fair. Again,
yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, because I'm on the same page. Watch Batman the Animated Series and write your movie, and model it after that. It's like the world is dark, and like Batman is a grim, dour character, but at the same time, he can fucking smile. He can occasionally throw a one-liner out there. He is a human being. That's like it doesn't always. And at the very least, it's like Robert Pattinson Batman does seem like it can do that at some
if
point.
the next movie has Robert Pattinson as a more established Batman who actually looks threatening and intimidating, and he's fighting some supervillains that actually have their suits, I will be all in, and I will forgive this movie for its sins. But imagine if they tried to do a Joker that doesn't look like the Joker. I don't know how I couldn't take the movie seriously. I don't even know that I would watch it if I found out they tried to put the Joker in some sort of Joker equivalent of what the Riddler was wearing in this movie.
Well, I wonder what this universe is going to make the Joker look like, because I mean, he does visually, like his look. You can tell it's the Joker because he's got like dyed green hair and stuff like that, but he looks like his face has been through a meat grinder. It's going to look visually much different
Imagine
than
if, like,
anything else.
Part 2 of the Batman comes out, and the Joker's outfit is like pants and a hoodie, because that's realistic, and that's what someone as crazy as the Joker would wear. I would hate it. I would absolutely fucking hate it.
Well, it's like Jared Leto, right? With all the tattoos and the costume design that they had for him. People hated
alligator leather. Yeah.
People hated it.
That was more of a costume than what the Riddler had in this movie.
Yeah.
Like Riddler's costume was what, somebody who's trolling on, who's going through the poll boards on 4chan, posting his Nazi shit, who sees this guy going out beating people up is like, I want to do that, but I can't actually beat them up.
Yeah, I get that. This character, if that's what they were going for, if that's what they were going for, this character should not have been the Riddler.
Yeah, I agree that Hush would have been a more interesting character, especially when because they do this whole thing about the Riddler knew Bruce Wayne. Like, he came up to the same orphanage, right? It was like the same orphanage sort of thing, and the Riddler tries to kill.
Backstory at some point. Like, is it Thomas Elliot? Is that the Hush's name?
I think so. Yeah.
They reference. Yeah, Thomas Elliot's name is in this movie. So then,
and again, the Riddler is Hush in one of the continuities out there.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that would have been a cooler, but obviously no one knows who Hush is. And when you have your Batman movie come out, you want the Riddler. Okay, the Riddler is going to be like John Doe in Seven, and is doing he's going to have some jigsaw elements to him by putting people in these traps and all of that stuff. You got to have a name. If I was a studio and I was given Steve $200 million to make a Batman movie, and you come to me on the first movie, and
You're not
like,
gonna let me put like Prometheus in there.
yeah, it's like, and you're like, hey, the main villain of this is going to be Hush. We're not going to have Catwoman in it now. We don't need that. It's just Batman versus
It's
Hush.
gonna be Hugo Strange.
Yes.
There will be zero action.
Well,
It's just Batman walking around crime scenes.
supposedly what they're wanting to do for the next one, or at least kind of introduce the concept for like maybe the third one, is the Court of Owls, and that's like
That would
a
be
really
cool.
new. Yeah, well, that's a really new thing. Like, yeah, if you go to any layman and ask, my mom, that's always my go-to. If I ask my mom who the Joker is, she knows who the Joker is. She probably knows who the Riddler is from watching that cartoon back in the day. If I asked her who the Court of Owls is, she doesn't have a fucking clue who the Court of Owls is. No
Yeah.
one but a comic book nerd is going to know who that is. And like what you were saying earlier, no studio is going to let you do that. That's the same. That's the reason why Joker is in all these things. Like, what Batman villain do we got that everyone knows? You got to put the Joker in there because our internal metrics show that's going to up the box office.
It'll make
gate
$1
by
billion
point-
with the Joker.
I want a non-campy Mr. Freeze. Basically, I want Batman the animated series Mr. Freeze as a villain in one of these movies.
Yeah.
Okay,
Super
so
dead serious.
So you want in this realistic, gritty Batman Gotham City that they've set up, you want a dude in a suit who's basically keeping him at like negative 100-degree temperature,
yes, because
whatever.
I don't want this dark, gritty aesthetic. I want them to make a comic book movie.
I agree. I want a comic book. I want a Batman universe that would allow for that Mr. Freeze to exist. I agree with that. I want
I'm
that.
tired of this Batman exists in the real world aesthetic that the Nolan movies and also this are going for.
Well,
Yeah.
here. So I think DC could do the best of both worlds here because there are obviously a lot of people that like the kind of gritty, realistic, down to earth. There's no Superman in this Batman universe, right? There's no Flash. There's no superheroes. It's just Batman as a guy helping Gotham City when he can. But then there's also, like the Zack Snyder verse, where you have Batman is around all these other superheroes and they all exist around him. They're doing Flashpoint, right? So Flashpoint, Michael Keaton is actually coming back to play Batman in that with Ben Affleck. So Ben Affleck's going to be in it as well. DC, if they really want to maximize their profits, they're already establishing multiple Batmen in multiple universes. There's all these different Batman running around. Why not have what you want? So it's like, hey, yeah, this is going to be a Batman the Animated Series universe. We're going to do it live action. We're going to bring Bruce Timm on board so he can help with the tone and the storyboards and all of that stuff. We're going to bring those people on board, and that's what we're going to do over here. But we're still going to have the Robert Pattinson stuff. We're still going to allow him to
We're still going to allow this inferior Batman to be a thing.
They're not going to do that because, like, for whatever reason, it seems like Warner Brothers, like the people who make the live action like DC movies, none of them are the people that really have a love and appreciation for the comic books. Like, you can say what you want about Marvel movies being formulaic. It's a factory. It's a factory that churns out the same movie. I could even agree with some of those complaints. But what you can't say is that, like, the guy behind it all, Kevin Feige, is just a guy who doesn't love the characters. He's a comic nerd. He loves the comic books. You can't say that about, like, the people running, the DC EU or whatever it is. But you can say that about the people doing the animated DC stuff. Like, like most of those movies, for the most part, there are some shitty ones out there. But if I see a DC animated thing, I can, there's usually like an 80% chance that's going to be really solid and really good. Because the people who do that stuff love the comic books and put that love into the product. For whatever reason, the live action stuff doesn't get that for the most part, which is why we'll get things like the David Ayer, Suicide Squad, or a shitty Justice League movie, 2 shitty Justice League movies, and all this other shit, because they don't care about they just don't care about that property for whatever reason.
Okay, so this is kind of a side tangent here, and this might be something I end up cutting out of this if this goes nowhere. So your argument is okay. We'll just use Zack Snyder and Justice League. So your argument is Zack Snyder doesn't love these characters. He didn't grow up reading these characters. He doesn't understand these characters. Is that kind of the argument? You're saying, well, this movie sucks because the creative team behind them, they don't get the comic books. They don't understand it. It's like J.J. Abrams, showing up and making a Star Wars movie and not understanding, Emperor Palpatine or whatever, So do you honestly think that these people don't know, or like they don't get it, understand it?
To a certain extent, yes, that is absolutely what it is, but that's also not what I'm getting at. Like, with the Marvel stuff, Kevin Feige currently has de facto control over what happens within, like, any Marvel movie. Like, it's him, and it's well known that he's well versed in comic book knowledge, and he knows all this shit. There is no one in that position in DC. Now that doesn't mean like from a directorial standpoint. Like I've got like the Batman Begins like special edition where Christopher Nolan is saying that like he's not a comic book nerd, but he is a fan of the Batman character, essentially through cultural osmosis, more than likely like the TV show and shit. And but so he let like David Goyer and people like that write the comic books. Okay, I'll let you guys handle the comic book nerd stuff, and I'll just focus on making this look good. and I have the fact that Zack Snyder decided to make a Superman who doesn't really care about people, that automatically shows that he doesn't understand Superman. I'm not a Superman fan, but the one thing is, it's like Superman would pretty much kill himself to save some junkie on the street, because that's just how he is. He loves people.
So here's a question for you. I would disagree with you that Zack Snyder doesn't understand like the fundamental tenets of what people come to know Superman as. I don't think Zack Snyder's a stupid guy. I think Zack Snyder, he made Watchmen. He is clear that he knows a lot about comic books and he likes this kind of content. He wouldn't be making these movies if he thought that they sucked and didn't know anything about them.
I didn't say that. I just said that his take on Superman is clearly not Superman.
Well, but here's the thing. Do you think that is it not allowed for a filmmaker? And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Is it not allowed for a filmmaker to be like, okay, we have seen a million Superman stories with this same thing, right? Same thing what you guys are complaining about Batman. I've seen this iteration of Batman for like the last 20 years. I don't want to see it anymore. Now I'm taking this property as a filmmaker. I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to make a Superman that's completely opposite of what the traditional conception of Superman is. And, I'm going to give somebody something they've never seen before. And then people bitch and complain that, wait a minute, that goes against the core of the character. It's like, what they say with Batman, Zack Snyder, like Batman shoots the shit out of people in those movies all the time. Batmobile blows. Even if you go back and look at the Tim Burton ones, Batman's got guns on his Batmobile and he blows the shit out of various bad guys that are in the streets of Gotham.
Tim Burton is somebody who is very much on the record as saying he hates comic books. He doesn't read them. He thinks they're stupid. So that's very much he's very open about thinking comic books are dumb.
But we agree that those movies are good, right? Like,
I haven't watched those two movies in like 20 years. I have no clue if they've aged.
Yeah, maybe it is nostalgia. Like I also haven't seen Batman or Batman Beyond or Batman Beyond, Batman Returns in a long time. Maybe if I were to watch them now, my opinions would change. But going back to your question about someone wanting a brand new take, I think that once a character, especially superheroes, have been like out in the public for a long time, there are certain core tenets that if you go against it's no longer that character. Like if you have a Superman or a Batman that just starts killing people, I think you can make an argument that this is no longer actually the Batman. Like what if they made a Spider-Man that said fuck responsibility? Is that even a Spider-Man even more?
What if they made a Luke Skywalker who says fuck my friends and family, let them die?
Yeah, weird.
Is that Luke Skywalker any longer?
I mean, no, that's him. That's him being a Jedi because you're supposed to become detached from all that shit. That's him being a proper Jedi, has based on the way that they were established in the
You
shitty
fuck
George Lucas
yourself.
Stop.
prequels.
Just stop.
Fuck
Back to the Batman.
yourself.
Like
Yeah, I
literally
mean,
right now.
can
Stop what
make,
you're doing.
You can make if you had a Batman who maybe one of his parents survived and he's still the Batman to avenge the one, but his character is somewhat different because he had a different parental influence. That's a change that, okay, maybe I'm interested in it. If you have a Batman that just goes around murdering bad guys, that's no longer that's no longer the Batman we know. Maybe it's a different Batman. Maybe it's Wayne Bruce, but you have changed something fundamental
That's
to that
Thomas
character.
Wayne. Yeah, at that moment you have Thomas Wayne Batman. You
Yeah,
don't have Bruce
Flashpoint
Wayne
Batman.
Yeah,
so
but
like that.
but we're gonna see. Like I think they even mentioned Thomas Wayne is going to be in the Flashpoint thing. So,
God,
but that's the
no.
thing. Are we going like? I guess I'm trying to. I'm framing this poorly. Trying to get my
I
words
think
out here.
you can put your own take on a character, but there is a line, and if you cross that line, the character is no longer that character.
Yeah, going back to like the Zack Snyder Superman thing, like because I think even like we can go back through the audio and find out, but I believe you did essentially say it's like I'm going to take this character and kind of do the inverse of it. It's like, well, that you're not doing that character anymore, but you can't and even like what Steve and I are saying, like we're sick of like this super grounded, hardcore, robot Batman. We would like something that's more akin to the animated series that happens in a world that is clearly a comic book where comic book things can happen. Like if you want to give like a different take on Superman, you still have to follow some of the rules that Superman does. There's like a code more like let me sidetrack this into something different. The 1998 Godzilla movie. It may sound like a weird tangent, but when Columbia Pictures got the rights to that, Toho gave them this list of things. Here is what Godzilla has to do, and you have to follow this list if you're going to make the movie. Unfortunately, what they didn't have was any way to enforce it because Roland Emmerich followed none of those guidelines, which is why that movie isn't viewed as a Godzilla movie, and it's just a big iguana because that's not Godzilla. So Superman, here is a list. Here's a checklist. Here are things Superman has to do. You can do different weird takes on the character, but he still has to fundamentally adhere to these check marks. Like I would even say something like the reboot, like the new 52 stuff, where where DC rebooted the stuff, and Superman became a little different. Superman became kind of a prick, but he was still a good guy who still helped people out. But he knew how powerful he was, and he kind of got a kick out of the fact that no one could hurt him because he was basically a god. But he still did the right thing. He still did Superman stuff. But again, he was just a little bit more of an asshole. So there's your different take on Superman. But he still follows the check marks. It's like the Zack Snyder Superman doesn't even really want to help people. It's like that's not.
Okay, so let me counterpoint this. So let's pretend that we lived in a universe in which there was a Man of Steel 2, right? Zack Snyder got to make Man of Steel 2. And so in the first Man of Steel, and it's been quite a while since I watched it, so you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I've only ever seen it once.
Okay, so from what I remember, it's sort of like basically day one of Superman, right? He's learning about his powers, and he's trying to figure out his place in the world, whatever. And then Zod comes down, and then he's got to sort of deal with the situation. And the thing that people really hate about it is spoiler alert, he snaps Zod's neck. Like Superman kills, What if there was a world in which Man of Steel 2 came out, so Zack Snyder kept being able to do his thing, but that was just part of his overall arc, right? So in Man of Steel 2, he's confronted with another superpowered being, and he realizes, I can't do this. This is, if I'm going to be the Superman that Ronin wants, I can't kill this person like I killed Zod before, and there's a learning moment. There's a growing, moment with Superman, and then by the end of Superman Man of Steel 2, he becomes the Superman that you believe he should be. Do you feel like a story, a writer or something should not be able to show Superman making a mistake, or in the heat of the moment he's like, I got no other choice, I got to make this decision, and then sort of growing from that and realizing there's a different way as the story progresses? Because I feel like you could do that.
I don't know that really works, though.
No, it does. It doesn't work. Man of Steel never set up the fact that Superman has anything against killing, because the only reason he even takes arms, hypothetical arms, not literally grabs guns. The only reason he even gets necessarily involved in the fight is because Zod needs his fucking body, because he has like the Codex or whatever. It is Superman. Jor-El put it inside of his body. His baby is the Codex. He does have like the gene legacy of all of Krypton. So that's kind of the only reason he's even involved in it. Otherwise, he'd be pretty fine just shoving logs and people in truckers who are assholes, trucks. He'd still be roaming the woods he'd still be Wolverining it up in Canada, more or less. So it's like your thing doesn't work because the movie at no point set up the fact that he has anything against killing. So to me, I don't have necessarily an issue with that because that movie never set that up. So
I disagree with that argument, because we're talking about core tenets, things that are intrinsic to a character, and Superman not killing is one of those things. I don't think a movie has to set that up. The reason I think this idea doesn't work is because Superman didn't make a mistake. He didn't kill Zod on accident. He didn't kill Zod for funsies. He was put into a position where he had no choice. It was either let innocents get laser-eyed or kill Zod, and he made the difficult choice. If the end of Man of Steel was Superman didn't recognize how strong he was and he killed Zod on accident, then I think your idea has merit here. But what we actually got in Man of Steel, I don't think that works.
Yeah, and I would totally be okay with the Man of Steel 2. Well, I mean, it can't work now because this is the way they've already done Justice League and shit like that. I would have been fine with, instead of doing Batman v Superman, if they had done a Man of Steel 2, in which you had Superman who's decided to okay, I'm going to try and better myself. Who's decided that I'm going to be the symbol of hope, because that's not him in the first movie. So it's he does sort of see the tragedy that happened in Metropolis as a learning sort of thing. I have to be better than that, so I don't kill all these people. So the basic of what you were saying is, can he make those mistakes in one movie lead into a correction in the sequel? Yes, absolutely. They didn't do that, so that's kind of a moot point. But if they had done it,
just saying, hypothetical situation.
Hypothetically, yes, absolutely, I agree with that. But a
sequel can fix the first movie, but that doesn't make the first movie any better.
But it doesn't retroactively fix it.
So I don't know. I'm not looking at it in terms of fixing the first movie, because my argument would be that was the story they're telling, right? So I'm trying to go back to the very end when Superman kills Zod.
You're arguing, can you have a character that goes against the core tenets of that character if it's building towards a longer storyline where those core tenets become enforced?
Ingrained in them. Like Superman, okay, this is the first superpowered being this Superman has ever encountered, right? And this guy is tearing the shit out of Metropolis. Superman is what the fuck? I have never encountered anything like this in my entire goddamn life. And this guy, I'm holding him, and he's I'm gonna laser the fuck out of Steve and Ronan right now, and you can't stop me, or you're gonna have to snap my neck to stop me. And if I'm Superman, I'm what do I do here? A snap decision. I'm gonna snap his fucking neck. And you guys are saying, well, that goes against the core tenet of Superman. Superman would never kill anybody.
No, I have never said that. I fully supported Superman in that decision.
Well, then what is the problem? Like, what? So if the first movie is Superman trying to figure out, it's the point of the movie is not that Superman is like the beacon of hope, and he's suddenly he just defaults with all of these amazing sort of attributes people attribute to him over 70 years of comic books and everything. The first movie is basically telling his origin here, becoming the hero. So what is the problem with that? I guess
the problem. I don't even like. I think you're talking about something completely different, than what I was bringing up. I think somehow you took.
I didn't have a problem with Man of Steel, so I don't really know what we're going for.
I thought we were talking about because you're talking about core tenets of characers, right? And didn't Man of Steel go against the core tenets of the character?
No, it doesn't. Superman will absolutely, if he has to make, if Superman is faced with someone that that the only way to stop them is to kill them. I mean, I think that Superman won't take that step until he is absolutely forced, but I absolutely believe that Superman would take that step. Like, I mean,
but Batman would not, is what you're saying.
No. What I was getting at when I was talking about Man of Steel, like, I didn't bring up like the murder thing. I brought up more or less the fact that, like, you know, with the Zack Snyder Superman is a Superman who just doesn't care. He doesn't really want to help people. He's not really. He does it if someone crosses his path, but he's not like patrolling Metropolis.
Because he feels like a freak. He's an outsider. He's a literal alien on a planet.
But also, it's like, you know, the thing of him not really caring and not really liking people is enforced in Batman versus Superman, where you get this montage of him saving the day and the burden of being Superman, and he just looks bored and just like, I hate these people, I don't want it. And he has the scene with his mom where his mom's like, yeah, fuck these people, don't do this. Yeah, fuck the planet, fuck humans. And that was also the Batman's like dark vision, like his dark dream. That's him dreaming about Superman going evil because Superman doesn't care. Again, like that was the plan, was for Superman to go bad, because that's
kind of like Injustice, right? That's where they were kind of leading Injustice.
Yeah, because that's Zack Snyder's weird Ayn Rand take on this sort of stuff, where he's just like, yeah, that's how Superman should be. He shouldn't be nice. He should be authoritarian, because when you've got the strength, you should do that. Like that's his take on it. Like that's where they were leading. Like it only got corrected with the Joss Whedon cut, and which, you know, that's not a good movie, but like that's where Superman came back, where it's like, oh, you're having some trouble with a creep making like the bad Superman jokes and shit. It's like that's my thing. Is like, you know, like Superman is the guy who values the life of people. He values the buildings in Metropolis more than he values himself, because he like in an effort to avoid hurting anybody. And like the Zack Snyder Superman is just somebody who's like, yeah, you guys are fucking ants, I don't care. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about core part. I'm not talking about him snapping Zod's neck. I don't care about that, because the movie never set that up as a thing he doesn't like doing. That was my whole thing, is like, you have a Superman who just doesn't care, who was raised by his dad to just not care, whose mom enforced the fact that you really shouldn't care, because fuck these people. That's my thing.
I don't remember the parents doing any of that stuff in the movie. I mean, I haven't seen it.
I don't remember enough of Man of Steel to really contribute to this.
I don't remember Kevin Costner telling people fuck humans.
He didn't literally tell him that. That part came from like you remember in Man of Steel where the bus, like, you know, the flashback scene where Superman's in school and the bus goes off the road into the lake and Clark Kent saves everybody, and then his dad is like, because his dad's like, yeah, you're not supposed to be doing this weird shit in front of people. They're not going to accept you. He's like, well, what was I supposed to do? Just let everybody die? And his dad's like, well, yeah, maybe let them die.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, and then when he,
I can vaguely remember Kevin Costner, you know, basically being like, protecting you yourself, your secret is more important than other people.
Yeah, I remember
Ronan
that.
Might be overselling.
Just
how stringent Kevin Costner.
Let them die, Clark. Let them die.
But and then Batman versus Superman, when when Clark is talking to Mama Kent, and he's like, yeah, going on about, like, you know, the burden of Superman. She's like, well, yeah, you don't owe this to anybody. You don't have to save anybody. You don't have to be a hero. Fuck these people. Like that was more or less her thing.
Someone should have told him, with great power becomes great responsibility.
Yeah. So it's like that, like, you know, like, it's set up. Like, that was very much a thing Zack Snyder was going for. Like, yeah, that, he, like, that, like, if he wanted to write an Elseworld comic book where this is a Superman he wanted to, that's fine. But, like, you know, you're going to make this the cinematic Superman? That was my issue. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't give a fuck about Superman. But I understand that about him. So that's more the position.
I don't even know like how we got here. Like, Matt, cut all this out.
I can definitely chop out the Superman talk will be its own separate side thing. Okay, fair enough. I must say, like I said, I guess I was thinking.
Let me pitch it back to you, Matt.
Okay, pitch it to me.
Like, all right, so like Peter Parker, Spider-Man, cannot turn his back on someone in trouble. Is that a core tenet of the character that you would agree with?
Yeah, that'd be a core tenet.
All right,
he always does the worst thing that's the thing that's going to harm him the most. That's the decision he'll make.
So what if Spider-Man: Homecoming was the whole like first 2 hours of the movie was Spider-Man refusing to engage, just being like, nope, I can't help, I'm not going to help, I'm not going to do it. Spider-Man turns his back on every crime that he happens to come across. And then in Far From Home, the lessons learned from the first movie turned him into the Spider-Man that you cared about. Would you have a problem with that first movie?
Well, I think if the first movie, if they had said this is just a one-off, we're not making a trilogy of movies, we're not making multiple Spider-Man movies, I would definitely have a problem with it. Absolutely. But if I'm like, okay, this is the first part. If they're like, we're making a trilogy of Spider-Man movies, this is part one of the trilogy, and the very first episode or first movie is Peter Parker completely opposite, right? You don't see any of the stuff that's classic Spider-Man in it. I would be like, okay, where are they going with this? Just like sort of like, let's go to Force Awakens, right? They are like, where's Luke Skywalker? Luke Skywalker. Okay, he shows up the last minute of the movie. Okay, fine, I can deal with this. You just got to give me a good reason why he's doing this thing and why he wasn't in the first movie. If Last Jedi would have knocked it out of the park, I would have been perfectly fine with there being no Luke Skywalker, for example.
So in a first movie, you are willing to let the core tenet of a character be violated if you have a reason to believe that it's going to be paid off in the future.
I don't believe it's violating the core tenet. I believe that it is the filmmakers. I have to put trust in the creative team that's doing something. If they are telling a story, I have to put trust in it. And when that story is done and over with, then I will make a judgment call as to whether or not it was worth it, right? Look at what you guys did with Mass Effect, right? Like, Mass Effect's great. Mass Effect 2 is even better. Mass Effect 3, huge fucking letdown, right? But let's imagine for a moment if Mass Effect 3 was just, or the first Mass Effect was garbage, but then 2 and 3 were the ones that were incredible. Would you just sort of like say, well, fuck it, they fucked everything up on the first one, so it just ruins the whole story that they were telling? I wouldn't say that. I'd be like, okay, let me see where it's going. If it's a one-off thing where it's like, okay, we're just making a one Spider-Man movie here, and they completely sort of change the whole character, then I'd probably have a problem with it. But in this case, for example, we're bringing it back around to Batman. This Batman here, it's a Batman I've never seen. It's a young Batman doing shit I've not ever really... Even Batman and Batman the Animated Series, you could argue, was an older Batman. It wasn't some, 20-year-old Batman that was running around doing stuff. I've never seen this young Batman. This Batman fucks up, which is something you generally don't see in a Batman movie. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in seeing Batman grow because I know there's going to be more movies after this. I know they're making television series around this whole universe to flesh out all this stuff even more, and that this is one big, long story. I can watch a Marvel movie. All these Marvel movies are interconnected. I can watch a Thor, like the first Thor movie and the second Thor movie. Like, these are garbage. These are bullshit movies. They suck. And then still love Thor 3, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the story, the story that they're telling is what's most interesting to me. And I know with comic book stuff, it's long form storytelling. Now, 2-3 movies in, if it's still the same way, then I'm going to be like, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is garbage. They fundamentally screwed up this character. They don't know what they're doing. But I'm not there yet. This is just the first thing, and I'm like, all right, I'm on board. I'm on the trolley. Let's see where it takes me.
I guess I am if the first part of the story doesn't connect with me. If I feel like they have immediately taken the character in a direction that I disagree with, that makes me not want to see where the story is going.
And that's fair.
Regardless, that whole Superman thing that we spent 45 minutes talking about, we knocked it out in 10 talking about Spider-Man, thereby establishing Spider-Man as the superior hero.
Oh, absolutely. Spider-Man is the best hero. I mean, it's not even. There's not even a question.
Let's actually take this back to Batman now. Let's stop talking about all non-Batman things. What did you guys think about the riddles in this movie? Because I'm never going to watch this movie again. But when it hits streaming and clips hit YouTube, I am going to go back and rewatch all the parts with the riddles to better follow the logic. I think all of the riddles made sense, mostly. What did you guys just think about the riddles in general? Did they work for you? Did they work for the Riddler? Too simplistic? Too out there?
I want to answer this one first because then I gotta let the.
What do you think,
Frankie
Matt?
Outside. I'm gonna let Frankie outside.
What do you think, Matt? Ignore Ronan.
Go ahead,
All right,
Ronan.
I think the riddles were pretty good. The main riddle, like the main thing, like the thumb drive and like the Zodiac code that he leaves. It's like that seems like Riddler. That seems like a riddle or a puzzle. That made sense. Like where the whole cipher was just to say drive, and then you look in there and there's the thumb drive and all that. The main two that really kind of stick out for me were where Alfred was deciphering it, and he thought that it was he gets the Lorat or whatever it was, he gets that wrong, and it's actually a website. That was interesting in the fact that Batman completely overlooked the riddle about getting him into the light. That was I liked it. I thought that sort of stuff was good. I just threw away a 3 of a kind.
Yeah, I have not paid attention. I had almost 30K in this game a little while ago. I've not paid any attention to this poker game. I enjoyed the riddles for the most part. Some of them I didn't get. I thought the URL Rata or whatever was fantastic. I love that riddle. I didn't really get the last riddle, the one that Riddler was upset that Batman didn't figure out, which was under the Riddler's carpet there was a map with bombs. I didn't even really see that as a riddle, but apparently the Riddler expected Batman to have knowledge of carpeting tools as the key to this. Batman was supposed to see this thing that the first victim was killed with and go, ah, yes, clearly this is a carpet tucker. Be on the lookout for carpet the Riddler may have stood on. I didn't get that one. And I'm hearing silence. So I'm guessing no one else did either.
If I would be completely honest, I'm terrible with riddles, and so I didn't really. If you were to ask me name a riddle that was in this movie, I wouldn't even be able to tell you one. I honestly didn't really pay attention to the riddles whatsoever.
So the riddles just kind of happened at you, and you just assumed that Batman must have gotten it because the movie is progressing.
Basically, I just kind of I don't know. Like if I find myself watching a movie that's got sort of like, well, I mean that's not even necessarily true. Um, Okay, let me rephrase phrase this differently. I like murder mysteries a lot, so I like watching films that are murder mysteries because, like for example, Knives Out, the Ryan Johnson, our favorite Star Wars director, Ryan Johnson, made a movie called Knives Out, and that's a murder mystery, and it's awesome, and it's got all kinds of twists and turns. You're trying to figure out who murdered who and what's going on. I love that stuff. When I'm watching a superhero movie in which that's not necessarily the focus. The focus is not on just the murder mystery, but also all this other stuff: explosions, car chases, fight scenes, romance with Catwoman, and backstory of all these different characters. If I find myself looking at one of these riddles by the Riddler and sitting there trying to work it out in my mind as to what it could be,
You'll miss the rest of the movie.
I'm missing everything else because my brain is all over the place, and I have to be able to focus on the movie. So yeah, I do kind of just experience the movie as it's coming along. I don't ultimately really care about the riddles in the movie because I know the end of the movie. I know Batman's going to catch the Riddler. I know that it's all going to end hunky dory. It's a superhero movie. Batman's going to win and figure it out. To me, the riddles are probably the least interesting aspect of the Riddler. I think it was far more interesting, like the Riddler's reasons for why he was doing the things that he was doing, rather than the individual riddles themselves. And I remember the one where it's like, oh, he's in the light, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because as soon as Batman mentioned it, I was like, oh, okay, now I'm thinking about it, that made total sense. But again, I didn't care. It's like the riddles are just there to move the story forward. It's nothing. I don't know. It's almost like are the riddles a crutch for the story? Like, you don't have a good story, so you have to make these weird riddles to just try to get Batman from point A to C to D to Z and like all of these various things. I don't know.
I can see that because this movie is bloated. Like I mean, imagine you put a bad guy in this movie that didn't have riddles. Like we lose 30 minutes immediately, and you can tell the same story because the Riddler is just a crazy person that happens to like riddles.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You could it could literally just be him doing the same thing, live streaming him, because he came across as Jigsaw for a lot of this. He's on live stream or something, and he's got what was that one where he had the guy like the tubes connected to the guy's stomach was like
rat
rats.
Maze.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, he's this weird serial killer, but you didn't need to have any riddles in this stuff at all. The riddles, again, I wasn't paying super close attention to them, so maybe I'm missing something. But I didn't feel like they were fundamental to anything that was really going on. He could have just said, hey, Batman, go here next for your next clue to where the next victim's going to be, or something like that. He didn't even have to make Batman sort of try to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't really recall a reason for the Riddler to be leaving these riddles outside of he likes riddles.
Yeah,
now I'm back to thinking that the Riddler was just not the right. As much as I love the Riddler, not this version's outfit, but the Riddler just maybe wasn't the best move for this movie. Like who?
Well,
I mean, I'm trying to think now of a villain that could have been in its place and accomplished the same goal without riddles.
Well, what great riddles did Jim Carrey's Riddler do? Like, I can't even remember a single cool. I was like, wow, the Riddler did something really neat here.
His riddles weren't cool. Like, they were very simplistic. Like, I mean, the answer to one was you're as blind as a bat.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, nothing cool happened with any of them.
Yeah, I don't remember any Jim Carrey riddles. I don't remember a single one.
I feel like the Riddler is cooler in theory than he is in real. Maybe in the video games. Some of those Arkham games some of the Riddler stuff is kind of neat in them, but I've never really, and maybe this is just my bias, like I've never really thought the Riddler was cool. Like it was just kind of like, all right. Again, because I don't pay attention to the riddles because I don't care about them. I know Batman's gonna figure them out, and I'm just waiting for Batman to, haha, got you, Riddler.
I mean, he kind of didn't. Like in this movie, I mean, we're back to a more inexperienced Batman. Batman kind of stumbled his way. I mean, I would argue that Batman solved a couple of riddles, but it was mostly Alfred with a penguin assist that actually solved this.
Well, yeah, and that gets back to that Joker scene, that deleted Joker scene. Joker basically figures out everything for Batman in about 10-second span. And, it's kind of like Batman kind of, like, on one hand, like, aesthetically in the way the movie portrays Batman, he's portrayed as this very effective detective, and he's figuring out everything. He's, the Batman that you want. He's 20 steps ahead of everybody, right? He's got the kryptonite, and he's got, everything to take out the Justice League because he thinks so far ahead of everybody and can figure it out. This movie, he was just kind of, like you said, he's kind of stumbling his way through. Villains are actually figuring everything out before the Batman. But again, like, that didn't necessarily bother me because I want to see where the rest of the story goes. I want to see him grow into, hopefully, the character that we all want to see. And, whether or not they do that or not, time will tell. Well, we could have I could have a completely different opinion of this movie in 5 or 6 years when the next two movies are out, and we realize, okay, yeah, that first movie kind of sucked. This Batman has not grown at all in any way.
We're on Batman 3 now, and he's still whiny. Still looks into his chest when he talks. He told Alfred, "You're not my dad," again. Maybe the Batman side.
Maybe, yeah.
At which point, one last well, maybe not one last, another one. Do you think he injected himself with venom, or if that was like an adrenaline shot?
Oh, I just assumed that was adrenaline.
Yeah, I would assume it's adrenaline.
The venom didn't even.
Bane's not in this movie, is it?
No, he's not. But he did pull out a green glowing vial and shove it into his leg.
Oh, I didn't realize it was green, I guess. I thought it was just an adrenaline.
I assumed that was an adrenaline shot, like in Left 4 Dead.
Like Reagent from Reanimator, like that kind of green? Like glowing green?
It wasn't like super bright glowing, but it definitely wasn't just some clear liquid. It was like it was something green he injected into himself. So when I saw that, I was like, huh, that's weird. Is that venom? Because I know, like, that's the thing that like Red Hood, Jason Todd Red Hood will do. He will he carries venom around with him, and when he's out, doing his shootings and stuff, if something's gone a little out of his control, he'll shoot himself up with venom.
Huh. I didn't get that at all from it.
Yeah, same.
But that first kid that Batman saves, he's totally going to become Robin, right?
He might.
He's totally going to become Robin.
If I'm not mistaken, I've heard them say that they would like at least Robert Pattinson has said he's like, unlike Christian Bale, who was like, no, if they do a Robin, then I'm not doing the movie. Robert Pattinson is actually pretty interested in the idea of bringing in a Robin.
I like Robin. Having a Robin would definitely inject more of a comic book feel into this universe, so I fully support that.
Can you have a Robin with such a young Batman, though? Would that ruin it? Because
the way DC continuity's been working, like, Batman goes through a new Robin every couple years. So yeah, I think Batman's got to start early to get through like the 5 or 6 Robins that have existed.
Yeah, man, you got to hook them early, kind of like with religion. You got to get them while they're young.
Okay, so let's wrap up our thoughts on the Batman.
Oh, thank God.
Let's hey man, I'm the one that has to edit this stupid thing, so yeah. Let's give our final thoughts on the Batman. I'll go ahead and rate it on my scale. I'm gonna give this a solid B. solid B on my A to F scale. I think that it was a little too long. I feel like all the components and elements were there for a really good movie. I think Ronan, you're absolutely spot on. Everything's here. You can't really point to anything and just say that was so terrible or it was so bad. I do think the Joker weird kind of cameo at the very end did feel shoved in. I don't know why they cut this Joker scene but left another Joker scene in where you can't even really tell it's you can kind of tell it's a Joker, but you don't really see him. It just it seems weird to me. I felt like that was kind of it didn't need to be there. But other than that, I feel like this movie was a good time. I didn't really have any major issues with it. Solid B. I'm looking forward to where they go in the future with this. Ronan, what's your grade of The Batman?
Yeah, I would go. I'll go with a B. Maybe so much as I don't know if I go B plus or B minus, but yeah, it's definitely one of those. It's again, everything's there. This is good. All of the acting. The only thing Robert Pattinson does that I don't think his Bruce Wayne is really weird, but I think that's because he's playing him as like a social shut-in instead
A
of
14-year-old stepkid.
Yeah. Instead of a billionaire playboy.
Are we going to see a Playboy in the next one where Robert Pattinson's got models on his arms and stuff like that, or is he still going to be mopey?
It's possible. Like you could correct that, but yeah, I'm going to go with a B. This is a good movie. This is a solid movie. I don't understand why people keep saying this is a masterpiece, greatest Batman film of all time. No, it's not. But it is really good.
Okay, Steve.
C minus. This is a completely average
that hurt
movie.
You so much to say.
That's slightly
can't
below
imagine.
average.
I'm never gonna watch this again. I wasn't excited to see it. It did nothing to change my mind. This was emo cutter Batman, and I am not looking forward to part 2.
Okay, what do we expect from the second Batman? Is there going to be a time jump, like a significant time jump? Is it going to take place still young Batman? We're still in year 2. Ronan, where do you want them to go with the sequel? Let's phrase it that way. What do you want to see in the next Batman movie?
I mean, what I would like to see, they can't do because they've set the universe up in such a way to where you can't suddenly have Clayface or a comic book thing appear in it. But my assumption would be that they're probably going to jump forward maybe like 3 some odd years to where it's like Batman, the Gotham Project year like 5 or 4, something like that. And so you have a more experienced Batman. Maybe Gordon jumps up to a commissioner, something like that.
So, aside from the supernatural kind of villains, for lack of a better, he's not really supernatural, but some of the comic booky like Clayface stuff. What villain do you want to see Batman go up against in the second movie?
I would probably. I would say maybe like what Steve was saying. Give me a Batman animated series, Mr. Freeze.
Okay.
Someone who's just kind of cut himself off from emotions and all that. Like I would like to see one who's not like campy Arnold Schwarzenegger. As much as I love because that's hilarious. But that movie is a great comedy, but it's a terrible Batman comic book movie. But it's hilarious. So.
Okay. Steve, where do you think it's going in part 2, and what villain would you like to see him face off against, or villains, I guess, plural?
Well, first on that point, just give me a Batman versus one villain movie. There is no need to have 3 in every superhero movie. I expect nothing to change. I expect that any villain we get will not have any sort of interesting appearance and will instead just be a guy wearing normal clothes but with a slightly creepy mask. I would love to have Mr. Freeze. I would love to have Mr. Freeze, but I expect Batman in this universe to never fight anyone with any powers or special abilities whatsoever. And I will watch Batman and Robin before I ever watch this again.
Wow. Okay.
That was, yeah. Cut
So
this movie's dick off, why don't you?
so to answer the
It doesn't
question,
have one.
to answer the question of villain, obviously I would love to see Scarecrow. I think the ultimate villain that they decided to do with part two, because they kind of set up at the end of the Batman that Joker and Riddler are going to team up, kind of. I mean, that's kind of like Joker's like, hey, you got a friend in me, and I hope they don't bring back Riddler for the second one, because if they bring back Riddler and Joker, you know they're going to have a different villain. So then we are going to have at least three villains in the next movie, and I agree with you, Steve. I don't want that. I want one. I think it'll depend on what they do with this Arkham television series. Like, what happens at the end of that? Do all the villains escape Arkham Asylum somehow, or what are they going to do? But I would love to see the Scarecrow as the main villain, just Batman versus the Scarecrow, and I would like to see a time jump. So maybe 5 years later. So now we're in year 5 Batman. So we're getting closer and closer to the Batman that we all want to see. And I think the Scarecrow would offer up a lot of really cool visuals. They could do a lot. They do some really cool stuff with the Scarecrow in the Arkham games that I really, really love. And I think they could really go wild with it. And I think by using sort of like the Scarecrow, you could get the comic booky type of stuff that you'd like to see incorporated into this realistic, grounded universe, because that, Scarecrow's sort of what does it call, like this hallucinogenic sort of stuff that he does.
Fear stuff.
Yeah, the fear toxin sort of stuff. You could go wild with that, and you could really have some funky sort of comic booky visuals, and it's okay because it's wrapped up in this sort of fear toxin and Batman seeing weird shit. So I think that would be definitely cool. But yeah, that's what I.
You know what would get me excited for a sequel to this? If there's a time jump and Robin is just there. Like, start the next movie with a time jump. We didn't get Batman's origin in this movie, because everybody knows Batman's origin. Do the same thing with Robin. Just start a movie and Batman has Robin working with him, and I will be happy. And then also Mr. Freeze. And, like, cool stuff.
Yeah, and then the
and
third
a better movie overall.
third movie, of course, they'll have Joker, and Joker will have to kill Robin, because they even tease that in the Zack Snyder.
That would work.
They tease that in Zack Snyder. Like, Ben Affleck actually sees Robin. He's got Robin's costume there, and Joker spray painted the "jokes on you" or something on it. So we've seen that Batman has had Robin, and Joker kills Robin. That's a very famous storyline. They got to pay that off at some point in the movies, right?
Make the end of the next movie Robin being killed by the Joker, and then part 3 is nothing but vengeance against Joker.
Is one movie enough to get the Robin, get you attached to Robin though with one movie?
Robin's awesome, so yes.
Yeah, Robin's cool. I'm pro Robin.
I'm indifferent towards Robin, honestly.
I mean, it also kind of depends on which Robin they decide to go with, because as Steve mentioned earlier, you've got 12 or 13 of them to choose from. It's like, do you want to go Damian Wayne? Do you want to go Jason Todd, which would fully implicate the Joker killing him? Are we going to go classic Dick Grayson? Yeah, God, there's another one too I'm forgetting.
Well, let me ask you this: what will your feelings be?
That's it.
What are your feelings going to be if in Batman 2, Superman just shows up in the middle of the movie? There's no build up to it or anything. It's just like Batman's doing some shit, and then boom, Superman shows up, and it's established that this universe does have superheroes. Would that make you more excited for this universe, or would you be like, okay, this breaks the tone of everything they're setting up here?
That would make me more interested. That would make me feel like this exists in a comic book world, rather than, again, a kick-ass type world where just some random guy decided, hey, let's be a superhero, because no one else is doing it. Like, this movie and Christopher Nolan's movies, they feel like they exist in a vacuum where Batman is the only superhero, and I'm not a fan. Not a fan.
Yeah, I think that in these movies, Batman's the only superhero because Gotham City is just the only hellscape on Earth. The end.
Yeah. Are we
So,
done?
yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to another episode of Two Matts,
Sorry.
One Steve. This was long. Don't worry, it was long for us, but it'll be relatively shorter for you guys because I'm going to cut a bunch of stuff out of here. Stay tuned because in the coming weeks, Ronan, what shows are we going to be covering?
Oh man, we got so many we got so many great shows to cover. There's there's that one, and then there's that other one, and there's so much. There's just so much good. Matt, what, like don't let me ruin the surprise for them.
Steve, why don't you ruin the surprise? What are we going to be covering in the next episodes?
Doctor Strange 2, Moon Knight, Obi-Wan.
And that's probably
Right?
it. Yes.
Then we're going to realize this is a bad idea and stop doing this.
Yeah, and I think our plan for Moon Knight and Obi-Wan is we're going to talk about them when they're completed. So we're not going to go like episode by episode like we attempted with Boba Fett. That's just going to be too much.
Because the show was just too boring.
How crushed are you going to be if Obi-Wan also sucks?
Well, I wasn't completely crushed about Boba Fett. I liked it. I just was like, it could have been so much more. If Obi-Wan sucks, that will be crushing, because again, you're digging into these legacy characters that everybody loves, and you can't fuck them up. I mean, they fucked up Luke Skywalker. They fucked up Emperor Palpatine. They can't fuck up Obi-Wan. I mean, they can't. They can't.
You say that like they
But
really
they
can.
will.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They might. I don't know, but again, I'm gonna let it play out. I'm gonna see what happens, and I'll save my criticisms for it after they've told their story. But I'm interested just to see where it goes. Like, how are they gonna tell this? I mean, I saw the trailer. The trailer, I'm like, if you didn't watch Star Wars Rebels, you should. If anyone's listening to this, I'm sure everyone's watched Obi-Wan by the time the episodes this episode will air. But watch Rebels, because the Grand Inquisitor's in it. I think the Fifth Brother's in it. All these characters are in Star Wars Rebels, and they're major characters in there. So
You don't need to watch Star Wars Rebels. These people have the internet. They have YouTube. They can find out who these people are.
It's not the
without
same.
Watching yet another.
it's
show.
not the same.
That's exactly what I'm going to do, because I'm not watching this fucking show.
Okay,
This
but it's a
fucking
great
Rebels
show. It's a great show.
Ronan's not even going to watch Obi-Wan. He's just going to Wikipedia Obi-Wan and then give his thoughts on the Wikipedia
I'm going to
entry.
find the clip notes, and I'm going to watch like a 5-minute recap. no, I'm going to watch it because I actually, I've said before, he was the best thing about those prequel movies. Like I said, like that actor and all that. That was the best thing. So I'm actually. He's aged appropriately for it. All the timing is right. So I am actually interested in this show, but I do not have a huge well of confidence in it.
That's fair. That's fair. So stick around for those in the coming weeks, everybody. You can email us at outpostunknown@gmail.com if there's a specific property you'd like us to discuss for 4 hours so you can listen to it.
Oh, God.
Feel free to send us an email and let us know what you think. And with that, we'll see you next time. And cut.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Steve, how miserable are you right now from all of this?